93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Well, I honestly think I could call this the curse of James Boyd.
What?
And hear me out on this. And a good Wednesday morning, everybody out there. Yes, I am calling in via the phone currently. Hope the weather back in the Circle City is somewhat better than it was here has been the last few days. But and Mark Dyke can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's been times where, in the past, you'd have Jake Query sit in the chair that James Boyd is sitting in, and to say technological dysfunction would follow Jake would be the biggest understatement that I probably ever said on these airwaves. James Boyd alerts us yesterday that he had a power outage issue at his apartment, and lo and behold, 24 hours later, did I hear this correct? Did we have a power outage at the station last night?
I don't know if we had a power outage, but apparently our internet went down at some point in the middle of the night, and so everybody who is working remotely is scrambling because the Comrexes, which we use for like remote broadcasts and everything, are not connecting, and neither is the backup system. So that's why you're hearing Kevin Bowen's dulcet tones via phone at the moment. So this is going to be a fun day, I think. I'm ready for this Wednesday.
Yeah, now that I think about it, that was a pot shot at James. James, I apologize.
No, it's fine. I mean, I'm used to things being blamed on me. I got the 2022 Colts season blamed on me by Mike Chappell, the dean. So ever since then, I figured I can do anything but go uphill from there.
Yeah, it is funny. If there's any Colts issues, I feel like immediately people look back to James in the media room and just point to him since he's gotten on the beat. A good Wednesday morning, everybody out there. Thank you for spending it with us. We'll try to make things work and apologize for the technological issues here to start your hump day, if you will. We'll get some hoops. Purdue, obviously, last night, it is their first three-game losing streak in now, 5 years, I believe, and sets up quite the desperation, I would say, on Sunday afternoon in Assembly Hall between Purdue and Indiana. A couple Colts items I want to get to as well. James had a great piece on The Athletic on the 10-step offseason plan. We will hear from Chris Bowden and Shane Steichen in a mere 6 days at the Combine. So definitely want to hit on a couple items. On that front, some updates on the Pacers as they get back to action coming up tomorrow night against the Memphis Grizzlies. And for a second day in a row, it will be myself, Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, and Mark Dykton. Boys, outside of the internet issues, is the internet working now or no?
The internet is working, so you can use it to change websites like I'm doing now, looking up stuff about what we're going to talk about. So it's working fine. It's just that you sound a little different than usual. But you do sound pretty clear, KB, so I wouldn't be too frazzled. You sound pretty good connection.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate that. Hopefully we can keep things going. I do want to get to, and James, your colleague Richard Deitch caught up with Stephanie White yesterday. I want to make sure we get to that at some point, too. I thought her quote about, basically, are you guys a legit title contending team? I thought it stood out to me. She didn't take that question and try to spin it in a different direction. She answered it head on. And I don't know. I feel like I've heard coaches in a variety of sports answer that sort of question before, and I just thought Stephanie White's answer was different than what I'm used to hearing.
Yeah, I enjoyed that piece. Richard actually reached out to me, made sure that I read it, and I told him, hey, man, I was going to read this regardless. He does great work for us. And I thought that it was cool to just hear her say, the word championship, or the word contender or the word title. And those are words that usually teams sort of dance around. And they tell you, day by day or some cliche like that. But I think it's a reflection of where this team's mentality is sort of grown. And Caitlin Clark is the same way. She uses the word championships. She actually used plural championships. She was hoping that they're able to get a few over the next few years. And then the same thing with DeWanna Bonner when I was at her introductory news conference, asking her, what are you still chasing? What's left? You've done everything in your career. You've won championships. You've been 6-1 of the year. You're going to the Hall of Fame. And she's like, well, I want one another championship. And she came here to do so. So I think they're, to steal a Colts phrase, all chips in on this 2025 season. And so it'll be very fun when things start up in May. And then also keep in mind for the fans out there, there are 44 games this year. I believe this would be the most in WNBA history for a regular season. So this will be a lot more. Caitlin Clark, I think it was 40 games last year, 44 this year, and an opportunity to do something special. So I'm excited about it. And I would say that the Fever are probably in that second tier. I wouldn't put them in that first tier with teams that have been there already, but they're coming.
Well, ask your first-year head coach what she would think about that. We'll get to that audio here coming up in a bit. Last night in East Lansing, it was 75-66, the final score. Shocked to see Michigan State as their first win over Purdue in 3 years. But, again, a 3-game losing streak amidst certainly a brutal stretch for Purdue. But when we talk about title hopes for this team, I think you can probably extinguish the Big Ten title hopes for Purdue with this run here over the last week and losing at Michigan. It's just wild to think, a week ago Tuesday, they've got a 4-point lead with 3 minutes and change to go. And now 7 days later, you're talking about them trying to get a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. I mean, they've fallen out of the top 4, and that's just how jumbled the top is. James, I've had a couple things that stood out to me last night. I think there's a debate you could honestly have that you miss Zach Edey's rim protection more than you miss his offense. I mean, Michigan State lived in the lobs and just the shots at the rim. If you watch the close of that game, especially the final, 5-6 buckets Michigan State had, it was at the rim, at the rim, at the rim. And I know Matt Painter certainly points to a little bit of the pick and roll defense, and that plays into it. But Edey was just such – if he wasn't an eraser, he was an alterer. And, half the time, that doesn't even show up in the box score, but just the hesitancy and the scared nature that teams would have, it's not there. And then I thought last night, for the first time in a while, we had seen a team really kind of bother and neutralize Braden Smith from a turnover standpoint. He had 6 last night. That's the highest since the game that everybody wants to forget, Fairleigh Dickinson, for him. So I thought those two things, and probably specifically, James, I'd put more towards the rim protection because that is also something we saw pop up against Wisconsin, certainly in a historic manner.
Yeah, it felt like it was a bit ominous, Kevin, when they started the game, Michigan State, that is, with the dunk. And I was thinking, okay, and then their first few buckets were all in the paint. And I'm thinking to myself, is anybody going to, guard them or force them to make a jump? Yeah, they had 10 dunks. Cohen Carr obviously looks like he could be in the NBA dunk contest. So you want to save the NBA dunk contest, just put him in it and give him, some NIL or something like that, because that dude can jump. But that, to me, was probably the most damning part about what we saw last night, because Michigan State isn't the best jump shooting team, but they beat you at what they're best at, and that's getting to the rim and really just owning you on the glass as well. And I also thought that, Caleb First and Trey Kaufman-Renn, they got into some tough situations with fouls, and that threw off some things as well. So it's like, if you got to take those guys out and they can't play their regular minutes, and then Trey Kaufman-Renn, who's been, solid on the offensive end, but he's not out there to kind of counter some of these punches that you're taking offensively, then it gets tough. And so I felt like there were just some moments there where Caleb First could have been better in particular. But down the stretch there, I was kind of waiting for them to sort of stop the bleeding, and it just never came. And credit to Michigan State for breaking them down. And like you said, Kevin, kind of finishing in style, man. That last lob to Cohen Carr, that was like the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, and, you got to really go back to probably that first couple weeks of the season where, Purdue thought Daniel Jacobson, I think, would alleviate some of what you lost from Edey, mostly defensively. And I'm not going to act like offensively. And certainly Trey Kaufman-Renn has given them a huge, huge jolt from an offensive production standpoint. But when Jacobson goes down, back in whatever that was, seems like early November, they tried Will Berg at first. I think we forget that. And last night we actually saw Matt Painter turn to Will Berg. He's just different. He's taller, frankly, than First and Kaufman-Renn. But I think that question, and as you look ahead to Saturday, I know Umar Ballo to Sunday. I know Umar Ballo wasn't necessarily great in that first matchup, but certainly Indiana on paper, there is an ability to try and again get Kaufman-Renn First into foul trouble, which they both have battled, especially here as of late. And it's just a weird feeling all of a sudden to Sunday where certainly these two teams are in much different spots, but in their own little bubble, Purdue fans are frustrated. It's 3 in a row. Yes, it's been a very tough schedule, but still. And then Indiana's lost 4 straight at home, which is the first time that's happened since the Archie Miller days. So we'll be interesting. Coming up 1:30 on Sunday. Again, nothing for these two teams. Indiana, this is one of their buys. Purdue obviously has nothing until they will meet on Sunday. A little Pacers update from yesterday. We'll get to that on where Miles Turner is at. Coming into tomorrow night, it will be the Memphis Grizzlies. Zach Edey, speaking of him, his lone visit outside of the preseason, I should say, to Gainbridge Fieldhouse this year. And, James, I definitely want to get to some Colts items. We mentioned it late in the show yesterday. It was announced. Chris Ballard will speak to the media coming up at his annual Combine press conference, 4:30 on Tuesday. Shane Steichen, 5:30. We should have them on our shows as well, across station-wide. I say that plurally. We'll keep you posted on exactly the time and the date for those. But Combine Week will be here, and I thought your 10-step plan on the Athletic website had me nodding my head quite a lot at it. Maybe a few things I thought, on, but all in all, I thought that was a great piece that you did.
Yeah, I had a good time putting it together. It's always fun for me to not just say, oh, they should do this, pick names, pick players, all the fun stuff that you can kind of speculate about throughout the offseason. But I think the general theme of this 10-step plan is to, create more cap space and then use it. And then obviously go into the draft and be aggressive there too. But I think the biggest thing, and obviously the first step, will be what we see from Chris Ballard in this front office when the calendar turns to March and free agency starts up. And so I'm excited to see what they do or don't do to sort of validate whatever message or invalidate whatever message he sends when we talk to him next week. So we'll see how that goes. But I think the biggest thing is just making sure that you allocate the right funds to the right places. And, step one is pretty obvious, and it starts with some cuts and kind of looking at where do you go from there when it comes to creating more cap space, whether it's moving on from Braden Smith, Samson Ebukam. I didn't put this in the piece, but Raekwon Davis is another, cap cut, candidate, things like that. So we'll see. But there's opportunity here, Kevin, and I would like to ask you, what would tell you that things are different? Would it have to be one move, two moves? What do they have to do to sort of give this fan base some oomph, some, conviction behind whatever they've told us, the last couple of months?
Well, you just started with it, I thought. If they do cut some of those guys that you mentioned, they've never done that under Ballard. That would be the first domino to me of oh, wow, okay, actions are matching January words. Now, I want to be clear. Obviously, there has to be some dominoes that play off of that, but that would probably be the first item for me because, they haven't, had cap casualties, if you will. That's a phrase we hear a lot this time of year around the NFL, and that stuff starts to happen about now. For example, yesterday we saw Andy Dalton re-signed with the Panthers. We're starting to get to that point in the calendar, James, where the Combine is where things really ramp up. Again, we're 3 weeks from today, I think, is the new league year. I believe it's 3 Wednesdays from today. So we're going to start to finally get to this point where the words on January 8th or 9th, whenever Chris Ballard spoke, we're going to start to get a little bit more off of that. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that plays out. Mapping out what the show looks like for you today, we will have Nathan Baer covers the Boilers from the Indianapolis Star. Marquise 8:30, is that correct? And then Alex Golden from Setting the Pace, a little Pacer chatter at 9 o'clock?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so that'll be mapping out things today, and we'll keep you posted. I'm afraid, and Mark, fill me in if I'm wrong on this. Am I going to be over the phone all day long? Is that what it looks like?
You better have a charger nearby. Sounds like you will be.
All right.
You don't have a minutes restriction, right? Like call after 7 type of thing.
Is that still a thing in 2025?
See, I'm a little older. I know a few things.
Kevin's calling 1-800-COLLECT.
How about that? How about that throwback from James Boyd? I can only text my my girlfriend 15 times in the night, or else we're going over the rate here in the month of February. So apologies on that front for us here. Some technical issues back at the station. We'll try to hopefully get that ironed out here before the show ends. But if not, it'll be me via the phone here on this Wednesday morning. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton, 93.5, 107.5. This is the Fan Morning Show. Thanks for spending it with us.
Brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Corteva Coliseum, March 10th and 11th.
All right, let's head to East Lansing from last night. Rim protection optional for the Boilers, and a whole lot of turnovers certainly played into their third straight loss. First time since 2019-2020 that the Boilers have suffered three straight defeats at Michigan, home to Wisconsin over the weekend, at Michigan State last night. Afterwards, Matt Painter on the losing streak.
We messed up some ball screen defense stuff that was on me. And they did a good job of getting some flip-up lobs. And you can't go on the road and give up 10 dunks. And that's what they did. Our main focus was to keep them out of the paint and not let the ball get in there, and that's exactly what they did. But easier said than done.
James Boyd among the issues defensively, offensively, Braden Smith from a scoring standpoint, Trey Kaufman-Renn from a scoring standpoint, they did their part. The rest of the team, 8 of 21 from the floor.
Yeah, that was a rough night. You'd like to see more shot making, but even just early on, I felt like Braden was kind of off his kilter a little bit when it came to the playmaking. And I mean, I don't want to say it's his fault, but in a sense, he is so much of what they do. So if he's off just by a little bit, it does have that trickle down effect with the rest of the team. Now, that isn't to say they didn't have a chance. They obviously got back into the game. And you'd like to just see more, one, shots go down, but two, more opportunities for you to get those shots. And so obviously the turnovers factor into that. When you're turning the ball over, you're not getting looks at the rim. And it leads to those, transition opportunities for Michigan State. Like Matt Painter mentioned, the dunk opportunities, the defensive rotations weren't there. Those things I think can lead to a slow death, which is what we kind of saw last night. They were in it, thought they would kind of turn it around in the second half. Thought they ended the first half pretty strong, but then we saw some of those habits sort of creep back in, and just hasn't been what we've known Purdue basketball to be the last few years.
10 dunks for Sparty. I'm very curious to see how Purdue will respond to that. 1:30 on Sunday from Assembly Hall. That is Indiana-Purdue on CBS. Other local game from last night, Butler really ran out of the gym from the first half on. 20 turnovers, a huge number down there at Xavier, 76-63. So their three-game win streak comes to a close. They're now 5-10 in the Big East with 5 to go. Ryan Conwell, Pike High School, and the Indiana State transfer. He had 14 for the Muskies. Switching gears over to the Pacers. Again, they'll get back to action coming up tomorrow night inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. James, I do want to get to the starting lineup change here in a little bit, play some Rick Carlisle audio. Obviously, we saw that right before the All-Star break ended. You and I had this conversation maybe a bit this time last week when we had Rick on. But it does sound like Miles Turner is good to go. Rick Carlisle said he's been fine for a handful of days now, so that item doesn't appear to be anything pressing. Again, they'll open up with 4 straight at home. Memphis here, and James, I would say Memphis, appears to be on the short list of non-Thunder teams that, people obviously think can do some damage in the West.
Absolutely. I mean, anytime you have a player in Jaren Jackson Jr. who's an all-star, who's what he's become offensively while still giving you that defensive presence similar to Miles Turner with the block shots, you have a chance. And obviously John Morant, who is one of the biggest draws in the NBA, and I know he's had an up-and-down season from a health standpoint, but when he's out there, he's still one of the best players you'll probably see in today's league. So it'll be a challenge for sure, especially a well-rested Memphis team. But on the flip side, your well-rested Pacers team as well, and getting Miles back in the rotation will be huge. And then now I think it's all about solidifying, we'll get to the lineup changes and things like that, but just solidifying who you are, because I don't know how much Rick Carlisle can tinker. KB, like I would venture to say he would want to get everything sort of fortified before this playoff run. That way everyone's roles are very clear, it's defined, and you're no longer kind of saying the what-if game. Now, not to say other changes can't be made if you get into a playoff series and, matchups dictate something else, but down the stretch here, I think you definitely want to have a consistent rotation, consistent starting lineup, so you know who you are.
And then we got one more sleep. Is that right, Mark Dykton, before we get to this Nations Cup final between USA and Canada?
Correct. Tomorrow night at 8 o'clock on ESPN. I can't wait. I'm excited.
As a hockey connoisseur of, I don't know, 3 days, I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be.
Let's bleep and go. I might head to the general store down here and try to get a headband and act like I'm Fulton Reed and Dean Portman getting ready to check in the game. I could be Kenny Wu, was he the adopted Bash brother in Mighty Ducks?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I haven't watched Mighty Ducks in about 20 years, but yeah, that sounds about right.
Gosh, I'm going to dial it up. That's what I think of when I think of the Kachuk brothers there as things will get started.
Quack.
Thank you. The Flying V in formation, looking beautifully. Safe travels on your commute in. Although I'm not in Indy right now, I'm looking at the timeline, and boy, it looks like some slick roadways. Do you guys have any issues on the commute in?
It was just a little bit slower movement, I felt, and had cleaned the car off this morning and just take my time. So, yeah, I would encourage everyone out there to take your time because they just haven't been out there to clean the roads just yet. And it was honestly coming down as soon as I walked out this morning. Like, it looked like it hadn't been snowing that long based off of how much snow was on my car, but definitely not enough time, at least if you're an early morning commuter, to really, trust the road. So take your time and, know where the break is.
It's cold, it's snowing, and the wind was whipping this morning.
Yeah.
So there you go. Enjoy
Safe
Florida,
travels.
Kevin.
Safe travels on the commute in. On the other side, I like what James Boyd has cooked up from a free agency standpoint on a big name for the Colts to pursue at, I would say, arguably the biggest position of need, certainly on the defensive side of the ball. We'll hit that coming up next. This is the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, it is the Fan Morning Show. James Boyd in studio, Mark Dykton with you as well. Kevin Bowen in Florida. Kevin is having technical issues because of the internet went down. So we're having technical issues in studio. So Kevin will join us again at 8 o'clock, but we're going to give him a little rest right now. But we're going to get into the show going forward. But Kevin will join us at 8 o'clock. We'll probably join a little bit out throughout the show too. But it doesn't sound like those technical issues are going to be resolved before the end of the show. So we'll check in with Kevin, occasionally James. But for the most part, I think it's going to be you and me the rest of the way. As Kevin works out his issues. He can have a couple more rum runners as he's been having.
I was going to say, this is like playing hooky, man. This is me back in middle school and high school when I was like, I'm just not feeling it today. But no, in all seriousness, KB's dealing, obviously, with some things that happen here that he can't control, and that's just the bottom line. But I feel like we're in decent shape here. I've done this a few times now, so I hope you enjoy my voice. And if you don't, I can't change the voice. I wish I could.
You can do
an
impression, but
I can't.
It won't be natural.
No one can impress like the great Kevin Bowen and his great hairs. So, one thing I know we want to talk about after the break, Mark, was the 10-step plan, and the 10-step plan I put together. And it's always funny to look back at this stuff because we also do a version of this for those who are unaware. I have my 10-step plan on theathletic.com about what the Colts should do this offseason. I'll revisit that plan, let's say, in July or August before training camp begins, and you get to see where you were right or wrong.
That's always fun. It's like a show your work kind of thing. Like,
Exactly.
I don't know if I want to show this work.
Exactly. I'm like, I want to be able to say I was 100% right. And then the funny thing is like if they don't make a move that I think they should, and like the fan base generally agrees, it's like, well, you were wrong, but you were still right in your like thinking. So that's always good for the ego.
My favorite thing is they always assume that every like reporter and everything like that, like anyone who talks sports on the radio or in the media or whatever, they're like, how did you didn't predict that right? You got it wrong. Like, well, I don't have ESP. If I had that, I wouldn't be doing radio or anything like that or writing articles. I'd be at Vegas making all these future bets. You
know what though? I genuinely enjoy the accountability because I get it. We can be very critical, and I have been very critical of Chris Ballard. I've asked tough questions of him. So when people do the same to me, I'm like, you know what? I cannot dish it out and not be able to take it as well. So I know we talked about cutting Braden Smith, Samson Ebukam, these guys. You could save a ton of money in cap space. Those two guys alone, the Colts are projected to have about $28 million in cap space. If you cut both of those guys, you would increase your cap space to $52 million going into a very big offseason where you probably need to upgrade at a couple of positions. And then I would imagine some of that money gets spent on trying to retain Will Fries, your starting right guard. I know he broke his leg early in the season, but he was a good player. He should be on the road to recovery. And from what I understand, there hasn't been any setbacks or things like that. Very good player. And honestly, not to look at it from a mean perspective, but a real perspective, the injury might have made him a bit cheaper for the Colts to bring back. And there's some familiarity there. He said he loves being here. He'll let his agents handle the free agency stuff like that. However, I do think that he should be priority number one of retaining your own players. And then one name that kind of, got thrown out there last night by NFL Network, my buddy Cameron Wolf was reporting that the Dolphins will not franchise tag safety Javon Holland, who's 25, really good player, and I think he would be perfect for a Colts team that needs to upgrade at safety, where Julian Blackmon, when he's been healthy, has been good. But he hasn't been healthy. He played through a torn labrum this past year. He's had injury history issues. And so I think Javon Holland should be number one on their free agent priority list.
Yeah, it's one of those things, too, where it's always been an issue, I feel like, under Chris Ballard, where there's always a position of need that really goes unaddressed heading into a season. And, you have training camp, you go through, I feel like they can upgrade there. And the safety was one of them. Tight end was another one this season. Tight end was definitely the position of need this year where everybody's like, are you sure? Are you sure we're doing this? And we did. We did it, and we saw the results. Safety, yes, I think they could definitely upgrade. You can never have too many great safeties on your team. And if you can get one, especially a pretty good one, it's not going to cost you draft picks and everything like that. I think there's no reason the Colts should not be, at least in that discussion of signing him.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like it's the way I laid out the plan was you draft a tight end because I don't see one on the market that's going to be a big enough game changer that you probably just couldn't go the cheaper route and get your own talent, your own homegrown talent. Obviously, the big name there will be Tyler Warren. That'll be interesting to see where he exactly falls, because one of the things that we have to always be aware of is you can get married to these picks and these players, and then, boom, what you want doesn't necessarily happen, or it doesn't necessarily unfold that way. I mean, last year we saw, 14 offensive players in a row, which was, I think, an NFL record, all these different quarterbacks. You just never know how it's going to fall. But if I'm choosing a ideal plan, it will be to draft a tight end and then upgrade at safety via free agency, because it fits more of what you probably want with your defense. Lou Anarumo, if you go back, and I went down many rabbit holes, Mark, when it comes to Lou Anarumo. I had to do this huge piece about him before I met him, which is very, unique, because I'm like, I don't know anything about this guy. So I went down every single rabbit hole, and one of the things that I noticed was that when his defenses were at the top of their game in Cincinnati, which they basically rode. I mean, it's always funny when you look back at these teams, especially with guys like Tom Brady and others. Everyone kind of forgets that their defense was really good.
Yeah.
The Bengals defense, when they went to back-to-back AFC Championship games in the last few years, or in recent years, their defense was really good. They won almost every playoff game with their defense kind of keeping everybody in check, and then Joe Burrow being Joe Burrow. So all that to say, they had really good safety play, veteran safety. Jesse Bates III was the big name there. And then when he left in free agency to Atlanta, their defense fell off a cliff. They also lost DJ Reader, a really good interior defensive lineman. Again, fell off a cliff. So if you want him to be the mad scientist, which is his nickname, and Lou Dini and all these things.
Lou Dini, I like that
Lou
one.
Dini is, it's awesome. I also got told by a Bengals reporter, do not call him any of these things, because he is not a big fan of them. So we'll see. But all that to say, you have to be able to give him the pieces to succeed. And that's where I feel like, again, you can disagree with Gus Bradley being, or agree with Gus Bradley being fired or parting ways, which they just didn't renew his contract. My thing is, you said after 2023, hey, we didn't give Gus Bradley the right type of players. That's on me. That's what Chris Ballard said. We went young. That's on me. You come back in 2024 with almost the same roster, and it fails again. Don't do that with your first-year defensive coordinator.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to definitely make some upgrades there, and you would hope that he has a voice in the room when it comes to the draft, because he knows what he needs for his defense to function correctly.
Yes.
And, if he has a guy on the roster and he says, Chris, this guy's not going to cut it on my team, then Chris Ballard has to have the wherewithal and the openness to say, okay, we can move on from him, or we can upgrade at that position, everything like that. You're not bringing him in and not giving him any sort of say in the room, because you want to have his defense run as high efficiency as you possibly can. So you can't chop his legs out before he even gets going.
No,
can't do that.
No, and I think that's huge. And there's other parts of the 10-step plan that I won't go through the entire thing. That's what, reading's for. And we're an on-air show. I don't want to sit up here and read my homework out loud to my mom to make sure it's correct before, I turn it in. But I encourage you all to check that out. Feel free to agree or disagree. Just remember, if you disagree, you're disagreeing with perfection, because it is always right until it's wrong. And
yeah,
so
that's true.
Nothing's happened yet. It is 100% right as of, today, February 19th. So I'll take that. But one quick thing I'll hit on, just to kind of end on this when it comes to this little Colts segment. The last part of my 10-step plan, which is probably the most important part, and the steps aren't listed in the order of importance. It's more of what would happen in chronological order. But the most important part will be monitoring what Anthony Richardson is up to. And I spoke to some people, and it sounds like the Colts will be checking in with Anthony on a weekly basis, if not every few days, when he's down in Florida training, getting right, and they'll receive progress reports from his private trainers about where he is. And, the Colts are optimistic because 2023, he was preparing for the draft. He wasn't in your building just yet, or part of your franchise just yet. 2024, last summer, it was a shoulder surgery recovery. This summer, I know he went into the break with a back thing, but from what I understand, he should be healthy now, working, training, getting better. And so he'll have a regular offseason for the first time in his pro career to just focus on all the little things. And I believe a lot of it's going to be, footwork, short intermediate throws, the things that make you, I believe, at least a competent NFL quarterback. Because as we know, as we've often said on this show, you, Kevin Bowen, others, he can make every throw, but then he can't make the simple throws. And so the simple ones are the ones that we want to see more of, obviously, in 2025. So, there'll be a lot of close eyes on Anthony Richardson because there has to be. I mean, this whole thing starts and ends with him.
How common is it that you think another year 3 NFL quarterback needs to have the team check in on him on his offseason program and his offseason progress report?
Yeah, I don't think
because
it's
I feel like maybe it's elevated a little bit more just because we had the tap-out game and everything like that. I feel like that could have elevated their level of concern because year 3, guys usually know what they need to do to be prepared for a season. You've been through the grind of a rookie season where everything's thrown at you. Year 2, you're kind of like, okay, I think I can handle this and that. By year 3, you should have your own system figured out, and you're like, okay, this is where I need to improve at. This is what I need to work on. This is how I get better. To be in year 3 and your team's having to check in on you and everything like that, I feel like that might be kind of like unique to Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, no, to make this clear, though, this isn't unique to him. Teams do it all the time and checking on their players. I'm sure even the best quarterbacks in the world, like the Chiefs, aren't just going to go, a month without talking to Patrick Mahomes throughout the offseason.
But I feel like they can kind of trust Patrick Mahomes a little more than the Colts are trusting Anthony Richardson
I get
right
that,
now.
but just to be clear, this is the same plan that they even had last season and I'm sure with other quarterbacks in the past. The point is that and the reason why the progress reports are sort of different this year is because it's not necessarily a health perspective. You know what I mean? Like last year was a lot of where's his shoulder at? How's he doing? Is he throwing, with tennis balls versus a weighted ball versus a football? Like, is he throwing 10 yards, 5 yards, all those things? Is he getting that just full strength back? Whereas this year, no. I think it's more of like, it sounds on the surface like, oh my gosh, they have to check in with him. But no, it's what any responsible team would do when you just made a huge investment into the face of your billion-dollar franchise.
I just wasn't sure if this was like a weekly check-in or if this is like once a month or whatever. Hey, how you doing?
No. It's just there's rules and regulations around how often you can actually be in contact with, NFL players when they're away from the facility. But when it comes to just communicating, that's the biggest thing. They just want to keep tabs on him, which makes sense just considering he's so important. And so I would imagine it's not even just Anthony. It's probably other players as well. Now, I'm not saying that the Colts are going to be looking for weekly updates for the long snapper or something like that. However, when it comes to the higher profile guys, I would imagine that they're in constant communication. So I'm excited for Anthony. I do think that this is a make or break season for him coming up.
I agree.
And this is his chance to sort of, hunker down and really try to hone the stuff that we've seen because the flashes are so enticing, Mark. It's just that, as we know, flashes don't win you much in this league. It's the consistency. It's knowing who you're going to be down to down versus the highs and lows that we've seen with Anthony, which I would argue last season was probably more down than up. So we'll see.
Yeah, it is definitely a make or break season. It is the Fan Morning Show. I'm Mark Dykton, James Boyd here as well. Kevin Bowen having technical issues. He will join us at the top of the hour at 8 o'clock. Also, we have Indy Stars Nathan Baird going to join us, talk some Purdue basketball after they lost to Michigan State. And Alex Golden will talk Pacers with us as they get ready to return from the All-Star break tomorrow night. So we'll got a lot to discuss there. One thing, sticking with the Colts in the NFL, James, I wanted to discuss with you. Did you happen to see Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network? Did you happen to see his most recent mock draft and who he has the Colts taking? Because I saw it yesterday after the show, and I have to say, if it shakes out the way that Daniel Jeremiah has it panned out, I feel like the Colts need to trade down out of 14.
Yeah, I saw this, and I saw your tweet. Your tweet was the first thing that I saw because I saw people reacting to it. And I was like, oh, man, what is going on? Let me check this out. And he has the Colts taking Armand Mimbo, I'm saying that correctly, from Mizzou, offensive tackle, right tackle. In theory, my thinking would be that Armand would supplant Braden Smith, who could possibly be cut. But, boy, I think if in his mock draft, Tyler Warren, I believe, was taken at number 7 in his mock draft.
He was taken
Jets.
Way higher. So people were discussing the possibility of trading up. If you're trading up from 14 to 7, and that's at the earliest to get to the Jet, he has the Jets taking Tyler Warren at 7. If you're having to trade up to 7 or more, you are giving up quite the payout for moving up that high in the first round.
So you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Colts fans are ready for this because they're always ready for this.
Yeah.
If Tyler Warren is gone by number 7, I think that there's a good chance the Colts could trade back.
I think they have to at that point because nothing against offensive tackle. I know it's not the sexiest position or anything like that, but that you do need some hog mollies at some point to just pad up the front. But if you hit on those positions, that's great. But as far as all the needs that the Colts have, Yeah, if Tyler Warren's gone, you hate to say that it's like a one-man draft, but like if he's gone, you kind of look around like, do we really need to take someone at 14, or can we recoup some draft compensation and move back a few spots and kind of see where we're at there?
Here's the other thing. So I was looking throughout, and Daniel Jeremiah is great. Like I often talk to him.
We're hoping to talk to him at the combine.
Yeah, exactly.
The bat signal's out.
This is how good he is, and I know he works for the NFL and NFL.com, but the NFL will create Zoom calls just for Daniel Jeremiah to talk to other reporters about prospects that their teams are probably targeting. And he can sit there and talk for like an hour and 30 minutes, and he'll have notes, not on just like guys from this year's class, from previous year's class. If you ask him about, the great wide receiver Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State, he'd probably give you an opinion on him too. Like him and Dane Brugler, my guy at The Athletic, I think that I just picture them sitting in like dark rooms all year and watching film and then emerging from like the cave and then coming out and being like, all right, like it's all in here. Like I am
a bear
prepared.
that just hibernated, they're all disheveled and everything like that. Like, what the hell just happened? Like,
exactly.
I watched
and then they just get into
film.
like, okay, I'm a bear. I'm the man. And so they get to flex their muscle a bit, and I always say that they earn their paychecks this time of the year. But what was weird about his list is that Malachi Starks, the Georgia safety, widely considered one of the best safeties, if not the best safety in the draft, he has him going number 32 to the Eagles. And this guy is good. I honestly was thinking, man, if Tyler Warren isn't there at number 14, would the Colts go this route? Because I understand, I've said it all morning, the Colts should probably sign a veteran safety, but this dude can play. He's versatile. He's fast. He's high IQ, athletic, good ball skills, tackles well. Like he's solid.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, if the greedy Philadelphia Eagles get him, and then how many players do you need from Georgia, for crying out loud? Like, it's the Georgia Eagles. And so I don't know if I think that he would drop that far. I believe he's like a consensus top 15 prospect. And so if he drops number 32, that would be pretty alarming to me. So, again, no need to, be upset. I saw some unkind words thrown to Daniel Jeremiah's way. And it's like, hey, man, it's just guessing.
Yeah. It's all projections. Again, he's not wrong until he's wrong, right?
There you go.
That's the James Boyd mantra. Yeah, if he falls to the Eagles, that would be absolutely disgusting. It would be, of course, Howie Roseman will find a way for that to happen.
Like, I just don't see some of these players. I'm like, come on. Like, there's no way this guy drops. There is no way. And he has Travion Henderson, who's I like as well, going in the first round. So we'll see. But I'm definitely excited to get closer and closer and talk to these guys. And I guess to be honest about it, he does know more than the general public. Like, it isn't just me doing a mock draft. Like, he talks to scouts all the time. He watches a ton of film. So I trust his judgment. But it's always interesting to see, like, which guys don't necessarily have that consensus thought of where they're going to fall. Like, everyone has their big board, which is, just, hey, let's rank the players in order. But when it comes to team need and positions, that's when it gets a little weird. And so we'll see. But I know Colts fans are like, don't do this to us.
Yeah.
We missed out on Brock Bowers just last year, and here we are again. Like, don't do this. But I will say, don't panic and try to trade up for, a tight end at number 7 and number 8. Like, that's just not realistic.
Right. Tight end, I think, is the position you definitely need to address in the draft more so than free agency, because free agency tight ends, I feel like, are free agency quarterbacks. They're available for a reason. The top of the crop is not available. They're usually under contract for a long time and everything like that. So you're going to get like a Tyler Conklin or something like that who will be available. And
even last year with like Zach Ertz, going to the Commanders.
Zach Ertz was a great pickup.
Yeah, he was,
Commanders.
but it's like he's a guy who might be like in the last stage, twilight of his career. Like, you're not picking up a tight end in free agency that's probably going to be a part of your franchise for the next 4 or 5 years.
You want you want that guy to grow with Anthony Richardson or whoever's that quarterback at that point with the Colts and moving forward. We're going to switch off topics for the Colts real quick. I don't know if you've watched any of it. It just dropped, I think, earlier this week, maybe even yesterday on Netflix. The Netflix series Court of Gold, which followed the Team USA Olympic team out in Paris. Did you happen to see any of that? Have you seen the clips at least so far?
I've seen the clips online. Fun fact, this is a quick story. I have a Netflix account, and I have had one for years. But when they changed the location rules, I left my Netflix account back in Chicago with my grandma because she got used to having Netflix. And I was like, I can't kick grandma off the Netflix. I can't, and I'm not paying for 2 Netflix accounts. So the only time I'll be able to watch this is when I go back home to visit the family. So it's funny. I get the emails, and it literally says, "Hi, Grandma. This has been uploaded to Netflix," and she has no idea what that is because she's just watching whatever. And yeah, she has access to Netflix, and I don't, even though I pay for it.
It'll be interesting when you go back to finally watch it, and you're like, well, what's Grandma been watching? And it'll be like, well, Love is Blind. What are you watching that for?
Exactly.
What's going on, Grandma? We have to have some discussions here.
Yeah, all she knows how to do is just point and click. So I was like, hey, whatever keeps you entertained. She's done a lot for me, so I'm happy to foot the bill. And fun fact, whenever I call her, she's like, hey, make sure you're not calling me while you're at work, because I like having my Netflix on. I'm like, all right, Grandma, like I'll handle the business.
Yeah, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but we have done some password sharing in the Dykton household among my brothers and stuff like that. And there are times I'm just like, can you guys stop watching Friends for like 10 minutes? Like my brother and his fiance, they watch Friends all day, every day. I'm like, seriously, I like that show enough, but I can't watch it every single day, all in and all out. Anyway, back to the point of bringing this up real quick before we go to break. The Court of Gold season, it just dropped 6 episodes, follows the Team USA in Paris throughout the Olympics. There's an interesting one going around of Tyrese Halliburton apparently trying to recruit Joel Embiid at some point to join Indianapolis, or join Indianapolis and join the Pacers at some point. He was none too interested in that. Here's that sound from that.
You gonna come to Indy? Come on.
I might want to come to Indy.
Come on, let's make it.
Never in my life. I'd rather retire.
Yeah, that's not fair, bro. Next time y'all come to Indy, come on. Let's go to dinner or something. Come to my crib.
No, I'm good, man.
You gotta get out the hotel. You can't be in
I come to your crib.
Come to my crib.
I come to the game.
Yeah, come on.
So 2 things from that. One, I like that Tyrese Halliburton was like actively recruiting guys while he was out there. That's good to see. You want to see that. Like, if he's going to be on Team USA, you want him to try to find, like, hey, are there any stars out here that are getting sick of their teams that want to come join me in Indy? That'd be nice. The other thing is Joel Embiid he barely wanted to visit Tyrese Halliburton's house. He's like, come on over. He's like, no, thanks.
I mean,
I don't know if I want Joel Embiid anyway. He would probably spend more time at Halliburton's house than he would at Gainbridge.
I was going to say, the way that clip has aged from then till now, where Joel having the season that he's had and, missing a ton of games, and I don't know any Pacers fan that would honestly tell you that they want him as a part of the franchise, especially considering what you probably have to give up to get him. But that is pretty funny. But again, Tyrese, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
So keep shooting, brother. Like, get somebody to come here, and you never know.
Yeah, maybe not Joel Embiid, but we can figure it out. We'll go from there.
I'll follow up and see if he's going to get like LeBron to come here in, year 27.
So I haven't watched it yet, but Court of Gold on Netflix. You can check it out. Tyrese Halliburton obviously featured there. There was another clip going around that Nikola Jokic was trying to pump up Serbia into this halftime against their game against Team USA. So it seems like it's pretty interesting. I'll have to check it out for sure. James will find out in 6 months when he checks in on Netflix there after his grandma's watching it. All right, coming up next, we will check in with Kevin Bowen live from Florida. It will be weird that he's going to be a guest on his own show, but that'll be the case. We will join Kevin Bowen live from Florida coming up next. It's the Fan Morning Show. Mark Dykton, James Boyd, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, it is the Fan Morning Show. Kevin Bowen will join us shortly. He is live in Florida, but due to technical issues, he is going to join us on the phone shortly. Mark Dykton, James Boyd in studio today on this chilly Hump Day Wednesday. James, I know your commute was not too enjoyable. I know I was cold as hell when I stepped out of my house, so that was not fun. Kevin on the other side is in Florida, and he's just enjoying like rum runners and laying by the beach and enjoying the sun. He's going to have a nice little tan going when he gets back. Kevin Bowen joins us right now on the hotline. Kevin, how many rum runners have you had in total so far?
Well, the waistline continues to grow. Good morning, boys. Apologize for the technical issues.
Not your fault. Not your fault.
Standpoint. All good. I am ready to connect when you guys are, or whenever our IT department gets ready to go. So keep me posted. But yeah, the waistline is growing, and unfortunately, the Speedo look is not a great one here. I've gotten a few head rolls from some people here, so that might go back in the suitcase for the rest of the trip.
Has that actually happened? Have you actually busted that? I kind of hope you're joking there.
Hope that you're joking?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say you'd be praying for my entire family.
Considering the mock-ups I saw of like people like, photoshopping your face on like AT's body and everything like that when you were going to do your Monument Circle jog, I was like, for the love of God, I don't need to see that right now. But earlier in this show, Kevin, we were discussing Daniel Jeremiah's most recent mock draft. James and I just discussed it in the last segment. We think that, or at least I do, that if the Colts, where he has them projected at 14, who he has them taking, if that's the reality, I'm trading out at 14. I don't know where you stand on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, he had Tyler Warren at 7.
Yes.
And as I look over the entire mock, guys, that was the only skill player in the first 18 picks. Mm-hmm. So, when you think about last year's draft and the 3 wideouts that went in the top 10, and then you obviously had Brock Bowers as well, I mean, it's just such a different draft class in the scarcity of, like, offensive talent, at the skill position. So I just think Warren is, as dynamic as he is, he also falls in a draft class where – his appeal, I feel like, is only going to be higher to teams. First off, he's a great player. Let's just stop there. And, I mentioned the stat to you guys yesterday. I mean, the 56% yards after catch is just an astonishing number to me and shows you he's a playmaker with the ball in his hands. But, I think he is – I would be surprised, I guess, is what I'm getting at, that he would be there at 14 based off how you see Jeremiah's mock. And then if you get to the Colts and they are taking – and, again, Mark, this is a name that we brought up a couple weeks ago – the kid out of Missouri, Armand Membo, is he a right guard at the next level? Is he a right tackle? Some people feel like he's a guard. I mean, people would be it'd be one of the greatest irate moments in Colts fan history if they were to take a guard, I think, at 14. So, that's probably what stands out to me. It's just the fact that Warren is the only skilled player in the first 18 picks. And then if you want to go a little further, guys, I mean, he's got 3 running backs in a 4-pick stretch. I mean, when's the last time we've had that in round 1? So that's what stood out to me. If you call Travis Hunter a cornerback, the only skill player in the first 18 picks is Tyler Warren.
That is kind of astounding. To pivot a little bit, Kevin, I know we talked a little bit earlier about Purdue. 3 straight losses, first time it's happened in a few years. Where do you think this team needs to improve the most to sort of become what we saw earlier in the season and perhaps, get to that second weekend and beyond in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I think you got to get back defensively to what you saw in January. And a lot of that, I think, is going to be perimeter-oriented because you just don't have a rim protector. And I think we've seen it really exposed the last couple of weeks. I mean, certainly last night, Michigan State, 10 dunks. And, again, this not only goes back to, obviously, Zach Edey, but, Daniel Jacobson, for a freshman, was supposed to come in here and I think provide even some of that right away. He breaks his leg early in the season, and they've been able to, I think, kind of patchwork that up. And now you're starting to see, I think, some Big Ten teams, you're trying to expose that a little bit more of, hey, if we break them down off the perimeter, and, I know Matt Painter was really frustrated last night with their pick-and-roll defense, then you get to the rim, and the resistance is non-existent. I mean, Michigan State, James, you pointed out, Michigan State started the game with a dunk. And then if you watch the final – I would argue probably the final 3 or 4 minutes when Purdue had, a little bit of a puncher's chance. It was layup, dunk, lob, et cetera, to close it out. So, Sunday is always a game I circle on the calendar Indiana Purdue is always that, and I think I now circle it, even more of just for Indiana's sake, it's literally the last-ditch effort. It's weird to talk about Indiana in a light that, like, this time last year, guys, when we were examining the Indiana State resume, everyone hated the Indiana team. Like, everyone didn't want to talk about the big major team that's on the bubble that has all these chances. And they're saying, why should they get in when Indiana State, and now in this year's case, it might be Drake, they've got, 2 or 3 losses, and they don't get the opportunity to play these teams. So for Indiana, I'm curious that the week-long break, last-ditch effort. And for Purdue, again, when's the last time they lost 4 in a row? That's what they'd be looking at with a loss on Sunday. And, again, Ballo, he's certainly one of the better big guys in the Big Ten. I know he didn't really do a whole lot in that first matchup, but still, how Caleb Furst and Trey Kaufman-Renn stay out of foul trouble, which has been an issue, and then defend the rim. I think Sunday's got a lot of storylines outside of the obvious of, hey, it's Indiana-Purdue, and you fall out in bed and, hate your neighbor in your state when the other one cheers for the team you don't like.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Kevin, thoughts on we talked about it also in the last segment. Did you happen to see, I'm sure you've seen the clip circulating, but the Joel Embiid and Tyrese Halliburton exchange, Tyrese trying to get him to come to Indy, and Joel Embiid basically saying, I'd rather retire than come to Indianapolis?
Well, you can insert your playoff win joke here for Joel Embiid and how many playoff wins he has had versus Tyrese Halliburton in Indy. Have we I still need to watch that. Have you guys watched the Netflix documentary on the Gold?
I think it just came out. I think it came out yesterday.
Yeah, it just came out yesterday.
So I do plan on watching it. I'm intrigued. I don't think Ashley has any interest, but I'll probably sit back and watch 6 episodes. I think that they're relatively short. They're only like half hour or 40 minutes. So it's not like you're like cracking up like an hour of your time each time. You can probably knock it out in a day and a half. So it's not too bad.
There's 6 episodes?
Yeah, I believe so. I swear, I think that's why I checked. When I checked episodes, it looked like it was 6. So I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it said.
Well, I'd say viewing-wise for me the rest of the week, that will be on it. I want to see how my Micah Shrewsbury Irish respond from his rant the other night. Tonight, Notre Dame SMU. I'm sure you guys will be locked into that. And then tomorrow, as we talked about in the 7 o'clock hour, we got the Bash brothers. We've got the Kachuk brothers, Fulton Reed, Dean Portman, who will be Kenny Wu. Do we have an over/under on fights for the first 10 seconds of this game?
I don't know if the books have put that out there yet. I would like to say over half.
I'll say I'll put it at 1.5.
I was going to say, yeah.
I feel like Canada is going to come out swinging, like literally, because I feel like they're going to try to send a message the way the U.S. did the other day. So I feel like they might try to even the score.
Cannot wait for that. Nations Cup on the ice tomorrow night. James Boyd, I did want to throw something at you. The 10-step plan, Javon Holland, the safety out of Miami. Like that a whole lot. I know it's going to be pricey. First off, the age. She's 25 years old, so I don't think it'd be like a stopgap sort of safety. I know Cameron Wolf, I think from NFL Network, reported yesterday, doesn't feel like Miami will franchise tag him. I think you get into this point of the offseason and you're always worried about that. We talked about the franchise tag deadline yesterday. It's opened up. Okay, what will the free agent list look like in 2 weeks? Michael Pittman Jr., of course, last year got tagged within this window. So Holland, to me, when you consider Louis Anarumo has had, I think, hesitancy about young safeties, Holland theoretically would not be that. He would allow you, I think, to take your biggest defensive need and at least cross it off. Maybe your focus can then shift elsewhere early in the draft. I think that's the biggest outside, well, I would say biggest free agent name, period, inside of your building or outside of the building. Javon Holland, safety from the Dolphins, 25 years old. I think that is the big name to keep an eye on for the Colts here in the next few weeks.
Absolutely. And, again, I think this will kind of give us some material to sort of grade Chris Ballard's approach and if it's changed. And I think it starts with obviously making a few moves, perhaps create more cap space, and then putting the money where your mouth is, because we haven't seen him make that splash. And I know he's said in the past, like, don't want to spend, A-list money on B-list players. Well, I think that Javon Holland probably is an A player who will have plenty of suitors, and it comes down to how aggressive you're going to be in pursuit of him. Now, I'm not saying that you should, give this guy $90 million across 5 years or whatever, but it will be several $1 million to get him here, probably multiple years. And the hope would be then, beyond just giving Lou Anarumo something to work with right away, you would ideally have that position locked up for the foreseeable future, and it becomes one thing you don't have to worry about year to year, which has kind of been the case at that safety spot. Credit to Nick Cross for stepping up last year, but again, there just isn't a lot of players to trust over a sustained period of time in that secondary outside of Kenny Moore II.
Yeah, and I also feel like it's a pretty dry safety class free agency-wise. Like, I don't think it's got a lot of other options in it. So I think that could be a test of Chris Bauer's words. You know, he said something to the effect back in January of, hey, I got to get, I can't just get close in some of these free agents. We've got to kind of push the ball across the goal line, to paraphrase what he was saying there, of, signing these guys, finding answers. Again, I would kind of view Holland at safety with that. I saw in your 10-step plan, I agreed with virtually all of it. I will say this, and I know you were just kind of throwing out corner a name in the draft. Ben Morrison from Notre Dame, great player. I do worry about the injury history with him at corner.
Yeah.
And maybe that's scar tissue with Juju Brents, but it's just like injuries at that position. I just feel like you get exposed with just a little bit of a, nick or anything on that end. I like the idea of a pass-catching running back that you threw in there. I think you had Rashard Smith, who had over 100 catches in college. I don't know, though, if I'm ready to extend Alec Pierce. That might be hey, you're going to pay a little bit more of a dollar when that time comes. I think I'm worth taking the risk. I would like to see, and again, financially, we'll see how they kind of structure out those extensions. But for me, when I think of guys that you would extend this offseason, to me, I think Bernhard Raimann's the only one that's really earned it. I think it's too early for Nick Cross and Pierce, and I get that, he hasn't had great quarterback play in his 3 years. I still don't think this season was, here's your 3 or 4 year extension, congratulations. I still think it's another kind of prove-it year for him. He talked about how the competition of A.D. Mitchell made him comfortable because he thrives in competition. I want that urgency there for him. I think he had a really nice season. I think he's got a wonderful trait. It's a special trait, the ability to track the deep ball, but I don't think I'm ready to hand out an extension to him just yet.
I hear you, and that makes sense. I mean, he hasn't had like 1,000-yard season. He had a really strong season last year, which is it's crazy that he had, I believe, 37 catches for over 800 yards, led the league in reception yards when it comes to per catch basis, and I believe it was like 22 yards a catch, which is just abnormal. And fun fact, when I was doing some research on Alec Pierce and looking at his background, did you know I believe it was his junior year of high school, he had only 10 catches for 420 yards. Like, that was like 42 yards a catch in high school. That is crazy. Now, obviously, he's been more or less the same type of deep threat at each stage of his career. But I hear you, KB. My thing is, I look at it like this. If he has another season that's even on par with what he had last year, another team is going to pay him a lot more than the Colts ever would. Mainly because they would look at the quarterback play and say, hey, we can work with this guy. Like, I just imagine him in Buffalo, Kansas City, the Ravens, whatever, any team that has a quarterback, and they're like, we can get a lot out of this guy.
Yeah, that is certainly, I think, a fear that you would have. And, like, again, when you listed him out there, I can see why you had him on the list. I feel like over the last 18, 24 months, I've come to this conclusion of, like, I'm tired of Colts, and this is unfair to Alec Pierce a bit because I do think individually he was one of the better players last year, but I'm tired of them rewarding their own when I don't feel like they've reached the level of they've truly earned it. And look, again,
okay.
Alec Pierce had a nice season last year. I don't want to undermine that. He obviously made some big plays for this team. I thought he showed a little bit more than he had his first 2 seasons. And, making some critical catches in other parts of the field, particularly in the fourth quarter and overtime. I mean, hell, he had the biggest catch of the Week 18 game against Jacksonville on that third down in overtime. He doesn't catch that, they might lose. But I just think the definition of earning an extension, it's just been too easy, frankly, over at West 56th Street. And the rewarding of their own is too much of a Chris Ballard, I think, wanting to prove that he's right. And there's no way to say that without it coming as a knock on Alec Pierce, so I apologize that he's like a victim of it because it's really 8 years of this adding up to this level. But I just don't – like Bernhard Raimann to me is in a little different category. I think he's done it for multiple years. I think he's been, relatively durable. I think he plays a premium position. I think that'd be the big payday. So, again, I can hear you out, but I just think you need to redefine that a little bit. And it might be costly, and it might be a little bit risky per se. But, same thing with like Dayo Dengbo maybe this time last year of like, okay, don't give that guy the extension. Well, you see him play out the contract year, and it wasn't a great year for him. Now you can reassess some things. I didn't think handing Kwity Paye the fifth-year extension was necessary. And I look at Kwity Paye this past season and thought it was relatively blah, considering the amount of money that he's making, especially as a pass rusher. So that's where I probably pause just a little bit. I think you need to redefine that message for what it means to earn an extension to be a Colt.
Yeah, that's more than
I
fair.
agree there, Kevin.
Yeah, that's more than fair.
You know that voice, you know that hair, thanks to We Grow Hair Indy, and you know that Speedo, the bright green Irish Speedo of Kevin Bowens. He is joining us right now on the Payless Liquors hotline because he's having technical issues out in Florida. Kevin, speaking of that Speedo, we really didn't get into discussion of it yesterday. I know people wanted you to weigh in on it. The Micah Shrewsbury rant, we didn't get your thoughts on that from the weekend. Please give us those thoughts.
Just epic. I mean, I'm literally cussing at the TV watching them get, rolled the final 5 minutes against Louisville the other night. I texted Micah Shrewsbury. I said, I love the rant. I said, I'm with you. I am with him. But damn, hitting the mic, it was just it went to another level that I didn't think it'd go there. It was interesting how it just kind of evolved, and I'm like, oh boy, he's still going, and then boom, the hitting of the mic, I was like, ooh, okay, wow. Yeah, they got SMU tonight. For those unfamiliar, and maybe no one cares, Micah Shrewsbury, Notre Dame, they have adopted the approach a la someone he respects a whole lot, Matt Painter. They want to go to the high school ranks. They want to try to, and I think you have to zag a little bit when you're like a Notre Dame basketball. I don't think you're going to be able to live in the portal to the extent that maybe some other college basketball programs are doing. So you have to thrive in the high school ranks from a recruiting standpoint. They're bringing in a top 10 recruiting class next year. But that's going to take a little bit of time. So am I disappointed in this year's season? Certainly. Marcus Burton's injury he was out for nearly 2 months. That was a big deal. They need to finish off more of these games. They've had chances in the ACC. So I can state my disappointment there, but I also think Notre Dame under Micah Shrewsbury, and I like this approach, they're going to be different. They're going to thrive in the high school recruiting rankings. They've gotten, a 5-star kid out of Indiana, a 4-star kid out of Indiana in next year's class, a couple other top 150 guys. But that is going to take a little bit of time. Next year certainly will be the big year. It's just, and you guys, I've had this conversation with you, Mark, before. It's just Notre Dame men's basketball fandom. It's just not there in South Bend on a consistent basis, which is different than the women's program. I mean, hell, James, you and I talked about it yesterday. I mean, the women's program, it's insane how many fans they get on a night-in, night-out basis.
Winning helps.
Help.
I mean, they're awesome.
It does, but, it's always been there, too.
That's true.
Back to Muffet McGraw. Right. And certainly, Muffet won at a very high level. But, even Mike Bray, those teams that won, they would struggle at times to find fans. And, Shrewsbury didn't go here in his rant. I just look at that student section. I thought it was so pathetic the other night. What the hell else are you doing, Notre Dame students? Come on now. What are we doing? Just show up to the game.
They're being studious.
Don't live in the library. It's Sunday. It's 9 o'clock. Go to the game. Enjoy celebrating with your fellow students. You don't need to study 24/7, 365. Go watch some basketball. Be loud. Cheer for 2 missed free throws and a free sandwich. Just something along those lines. I'd like to see that tonight against SMU. So Micah Shrewsbury, I like the rant. I would like a little better closing of basketball games upcoming, but I still believe.
KB's mic, drop or hit. We should give him a flip phone so he can just slam it shut when he gets done with this.
Yeah, well, they can't. They have to study, Kevin, because they're watching Rudy 24/7. So they don't have time for basketball.
Here he goes.
Don't get me started, Mark Dykes. Am I seeing this? Saying. The Chargers Week 1 in Brazil. Why do I feel like we've had 13 international games announced in the last couple weeks?
It's been a lot, and I definitely think that they're trying or angling to try to get a team over there. That's what it seems like, and they want
in Brazil.
Not in Brazil, but in general when it comes to just having an international team.
James, correct me if I'm wrong. This is a Chargers home game. Don't they host the Colts next year?
They do. I'm down to go to Brazil. Just to let you know. I'm never afraid of a free trip here for some work, some very important work.
Flight, man.
People always
That's
say
a
that, but
long
you know
flight.
what? I sleep very well on flights, I sleep well. And again, flights are much better when they're like work related and you get to go and watch football. So
The Chargers' home opponents, obviously the division. They also have the Texans, Colts, Eagles, Commanders, Steelers, Vikings.
I mean, in all
Interesting.
likelihood, it's unlikely that the Colts will get 2 international games in one year.
Right.
But technically, it's still possible. Like we said, Mark, it is right until it's wrong. So
That's right.
Well, they aren't.
I'm following the
they
James
aren't gonna
Boyd
send the
method
Eagles.
now.
They aren't sending the Eagles back there. Last year we got Eagles Packers. I wouldn't think so. Yeah, I mean, obviously some divisional teams jump off the page. Maybe Steelers from a global standpoint, but interesting.
I could see
All
Texans
right, boys.
too.
Well, I will stay close if we get technical issues. If I get informed by the IT department back there that everything's good on your guys' end, I will happily rejoin you. If not, thanks for carrying my dead fat weight of the rolls over the Speedo here in Florida.
Well, it's a rare occasion when you're a guest on your own show.
I was going to say, like, you don't need to do the whole apology thing. It's not your fault.
It happens. All right, Kev, have a runner on us. We'll check in with you possibly later in the show, all right?
Love it, boys. Thank you.
That's Kevin Bowen right there, live from Florida. He might join us a little later. You'll at least hear a live read he has coming up from We Go Hair Indy as he throws those locks into the ocean later, or the Gulf of Mexico, or whatever we're calling it these days. All right, James, coming up, we got Nathan Baird going to join us from the Indy Star to talk some Purdue basketball. Speaking of Purdue, rough night for them again. We'll get that in the morning check down.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Corteva Coliseum, March 10th and 11th.
All right, we'll talk with Nathan Baird next. Rough night for Purdue. They came up as losers again for the third straight time as they fell to Michigan State, 75-66. Again, their third straight loss. They take on Indiana on Sunday. 24 points from Trey Coughlin-Wren, 17 points for Braden Smith, but James, it just wasn't there for him last night.
It was not, and it sets up a very big game this upcoming Sunday with IU and Purdue, where you can see why the game is so big for each program, where Purdue, you're trying to make sure you figure out who you are before the tournament, where in IU, it's like you're kind of on life alert, where you're hoping to knock off a team and keep your NCAA tournament dreams alive.
Yeah, so again, Purdue and Indiana will meet on Sunday afternoon at 1:30. We'll see. Something's got to give in that game. We'll see what happens there. Elsewhere in college hoops, Butler saw their 3-game winning streak come to an end as they lost to Xavier 76-63. And then Toledo edged Ball State 67-66 last night in college hoops. Other than that, it's probably a quiet night, at least tonight. Like the NBA has one game as they return from the All-Star break. But other than that, the real stuff is Thursday when the NBA gets back in full swing in earnest with the Pacers back in action, and then we have the what's it called, the Four Nations face-off between USA and Canada. That finale there. So Thursday will be a night you need to be locked into your TV. Tonight you can tell your wife and kids like, hey, you guys want to hang out today? No big deal. I don't have to watch sports. So you can trick them that way.
I was thinking the other day about how much time I give to sports, and we give a lot.
Yep. We sure do. All right, coming up next, we'll talk more sports with Nathan Baird from the Indy Star. He'll talk to us about Purdue. It's the Fan Morning Show. Mark Dykton, James Boyd, and Kevin Bowen via phone.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, this is the Fan Morning Show on this Wednesday morning, this chilly Wednesday morning as we're joining the Fan Morning Show right now. Stay warm out there. Keep it easy. Be safe. Leave a little early. James, how was the roads for you again? You talked about your commute this morning. How was that?
Yeah, they were pretty slick, I would say. Definitely had to take my time. The roads weren't clear just yet. I see that, I-65 and other places can be a little bit backed up at the moment. So, as Mark said, leave early and, take your time.
One thing that also isn't clear is the future of Purdue basketball at the moment. They've been in kind of a slump, especially after last night's loss to Michigan State. 3 straight. Joining us right now on the Payless Lakers hotline is the Indy Star's Nathan Baird. Nathan, good morning, and thank you for joining us. We'll just start here. Just your overall thoughts from last night's loss to Michigan State and what it means for Purdue going forward.
Well, it was really probably one that they had to win if they wanted to at least share the Big Ten championship, I think. I mean, they're 3 games back now, Michigan in the loss column. They've only got 4 games to play. That just seems like hard math to do. They're going to need a lot of help in order to – and that was the season-long goal, was to be the team that could – match the 60-62 Ohio State and the 94-96 Purdue teams as at least sharing 3 straight Big Ten championships. I think that's going to be tough right now. We went into this stretch of 3 games, the Michigan game, the Wisconsin game, the Michigan State game. We thought that this might be revelatory. I don't know that we thought that it would for sure determine the outcome of that Big Ten chase, but I think that has probably happened now. And now you've got a team that it's just – part of it is just the chronology of the schedule. They just happened to play the other 3 best teams in the Big Ten back to back to back, but they didn't win any of them. And now you have to do a little bit of, soul searching is probably too big of a word, but I think there has to be some analysis of like, how do you tighten this up? How do you get back to some of the fundamentals that you were really thriving on just a couple of weeks ago?
Nathan, as I watched last night's game, we noticed that Braden Smith had an uncharacteristic start to that game, 4 first-half turnovers. I read your piece on Indy Star on player grades, and 1, you get those out pretty fast, my friend, so shout out to how fast you are as a reporter. But 2, how does the margin for error shrink for this team when Braden Smith isn't, maybe at the first-team All-American level that he's been at often throughout this season?
Yeah, that is a great point, and it's not just him. It's really that whole big 3. It's him and Fletcher Lawyer and Trey Kaufman-Renn. Like, when those 3 guys are not really clicking, then it really puts some pressure on the other 6 guys in this rotation. Actually expanded to 7 last night with Will Berg, but 6 guys in the rotation to play really efficiently. And I thought you saw that at Michigan, where the 3 big guys played pretty well, but the other 6 guys, there was so much inefficiency in their production that it made the difference in a 2-point game. For Smith, what is throwing things off right now is when Trey Kaufman-Renn has foul trouble, and it really didn't cost him last night's game. I mean, he ended up playing, I don't remember how many minutes, 30-some minutes. He played more than his average, and they subbed him in and out once he got that second foul. But something seems to happen to Purdue right now. Not when he subs out. If he's subbing out for just a breather, it seems like they know what to do. When he gets in foul trouble, it does seem to affect things. Things seem to get rattled, and I'm not sure why. There are some other examples of like where this team needs to like find its composure a little bit. And Smith, as the point guard, as the guy who has the ball in his hand all the time, as the guy who has a huge usage percentage on this team, it's up to him to provide that composure. And he even admitted that last night that was getting away from him. Matt Painter took him out of the game. Like, he never doesn't play 40 minutes in a game that comes down to the end, right? And he came out for, it was only 30-some seconds, but Matt Painter thought he needed to come out and get his head right. And Braden Smith, I asked him about it after the game. He said, like, yeah, he's probably right. Like, it definitely helped me to come out. That's something that this team has to address by Sunday when they go to IU.
One more about that game as they prepare for IU. How does Caleb Furst fit into this picture? Because as I watched last night, it seems like he can sometimes, similar to Trey Kaufman-Renn last few games, that foul trouble throws him off a bit, and they really don't have the depth to sort of rely on him, or not, I don't mean rely, but miss him as they did last year, obviously with Zach Edey taking up so much space in the middle.
Yeah, I thought last night showed – last time might have been the game that they missed Daniel Jacobson the most, the guy who was the 7'4" freshman center who suffered a broken bone in his leg in the second game of the year and has missed the whole season because of the lack of rim protection. And that would have made someone like Caleb First more of a role player. This year he's had to step up and be a starter. Now, to his credit, and that didn't happen till mid-season, but to his credit, he played like a starter during that long stretch where Purdue was really building itself back into leading the Big Ten. I mean, 3 games ago, they were in first place in the Big Ten. And he was a huge part of that by what he brought from a defensive versatility standpoint. He can go out and guard guards if he has to, but he's also obviously has the size to bang around with big guys underneath. And the rebounding that he provided. Well, last night, 0 rebounds. And I think we've seen at times what the offensive limitations are. He'll have games where he can pretty efficiently score underneath, and then he has other games where he doesn't. He's not excellent at the free throw line by any means. So if there's a game where he's not rebounding and where he's not really giving him anything offensively, that becomes a really tough lineup spot to have out there in a game like Michigan State, where you're playing on the road against one of the other best teams in the country. So I think that's a person that you look ahead into an NCAA tournament scenario and say, all right, first round game, maybe that isn't what costs you, but when you progress and you have to start going up against the best 5-for-5 in the country, what are you getting out of him?
He's Nathan Baird of the Indy Star, covers Purdue sports. He's joining us on the Payless Liquors hotline. It's the Fan Morning Show. Mark Dykton and James Boyd, Kevin Bowen out in Florida. Nathan, have your projections of Purdue's tournament run, whether it's Big Ten or the NCAA tournament, has that drastically changed during this 3-game losing streak?
I don't know about drastically, but somewhat. I still think this looks like a second round of the NCAA tournament team. Something that kind of crystallized for me last night, if you go back to 2018, that team started 12-0 in the Big Ten. And then it lost 3 straight games from, I think, February 7th to the 22nd. And they were all like, it was a 1-point loss at Michigan State. It was or maybe that was Michigan. It was like a 3 or 4 point loss to a couple other teams. Michigan, Wisconsin was in there. And they lost the Big Ten by 1 game to Michigan State. But they won their last 3 games. And then that was a team that got to the Big Ten championship game and lost to that Michigan team that then went on and lost to, I think, Villanova in the national championship game. You had they come back and they make the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, and that was the year that Isaac Haas broke his arm, so they go and lose to Texas Tech in Boston in the Sweet 16. But who knows what that team could have done if it had him healthy and playing. So there's still a lot ahead of this team. This was a tough stretch. They definitely had a chance to step up and play the other 3 best teams in the Big Ten and come out of it in position to either still be leading the Big Ten or right there. And instead, now they're looking up at 3 other teams. So you're trying to finish strong, make sure you get that double bye if you can with a top 4 in the Big Ten tournament. But I think bigger problems for them is just, again, shoring up some of these things that got away from them. When they were talking about the Wisconsin game is the one that almost is the most concerning in some ways, because as this team made its surge, it was doing it on the back of like raising its floor defensively. It was kind of buying itself more margin for error on offense by how well it was playing defensively. And all the players are talking about and attention to detail being a big factor in that. And you get into these last 2 games where Wisconsin just torches them, and Matt Painter's coming out of that game. And he started talking about it against Michigan the game before, talking about a lack of concentration where they're letting some of that attention to detail slip. You saw it last night against Michigan State where Painter was taking the blame for that himself, just all those deep post lobs that they were getting regardless of what was happening out in transition. So this is a team that I think definitely needs to find itself again defensively going into the tournament, or it's going to be vulnerable probably even as early as that second game.
I was just going to ask you, so let's play the hypothetical game. More likely for Purdue, an Elite 8 appearance or a first weekend exit?
Oh, man. A few weeks ago, I would have said more likely Elite 8 appearance. I guess now I would maybe say more likely first round exit. I still think they would probably get out of the first weekend. But if you get the wrong matchup, and that's what we've also seen. I mean, this is also a team, and it was a very different team back on December 5th in some ways, but that team that went to Penn State and just got run out of the gym by a team that caused a bunch of turnovers and got out in transition and led them by 30 with 10 minutes to play. I mean, there are still some vulnerabilities against the wrong kind of team on the wrong night. So that's something that, again, it fluctuates because, again, like I said, just 2 weeks ago they were in first place, and I would have probably taken the other answer. So I think if they can just get back to raising that floor defensively and shoring things up there and buying themselves some time. Because you saw last night a team that was just hurrying itself up. And Michigan State was too. Michigan State gets credit for what happened, but a team that looked out of control at times, as you were saying with the Braden Smith turnovers, it's just they've got to give themselves a better chance on defense, and I think that settles things down overall.
Last one from me, Nathan. What is the key when it comes to knocking off IU this Sunday at Assembly Hall? Obviously, we know that Indiana's desperate. I would imagine Mike Woodson and potentially his last game against Purdue, like a dub against them. But what's the key to the Boilermakers sort of getting back on track and spoiling the party?
There are a couple things. I mean, from one standpoint, I can tell you X's and O's things. I can tell you that they've got to keep them off of the offensive rebounds. I thought they did a decent job of that in the first meeting. It's something they've gotten better at over the course of the season. It was something that's really costing them early. I think you just can't give IU extra possessions, so you also can't have the problems you had yesterday, which was it was only 12 turnovers, but they were happening in like the worst possible place on the floor. I think Michigan State turned 9 turnovers into 18 points or 17 points over the last 24 minutes of that game. So don't give IU extra possessions. But I also think just that composure that I was talking about before, like it's been an emotional kick in the gut a little bit for them, I think, to lose these 3 in a row. A lot of the guys on this team, we were asking them after the game last night, they don't remember ever losing 3 games in a row. Like Trey Coffin-Wren, multi-time state champion. Braden Smith, all the success he had. Fletcher Loyer, like all these guys played for really good high school teams. They don't remember ever losing 3 games in a row. So how do you get your head on straight coming out of that and get regrouped into what's going to be obviously a hostile environment on Sunday?
Nathan, we appreciate the time. Thank you always for picking up the phone for us.
Anytime, guys. Thanks a lot.
That was Nathan Baird of the Indy Star joining us on the Payless Liquors hotline. We're going to take a break. We'll come back in just a few minutes. It's the wake up call. I'm going to do that a couple times. Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, Fan Morning Show on this chilly Wednesday. Again, give yourself plenty of time to get to work, drop the kids off at school, all that stuff. It is cold. Last I checked, it was windy. It was snowing a little bit. So stay safe out there. It's Mark Dykton, James Boyd on 93.5, 107.5. The Fan. James, we kind of sprayed all fields today. It's kind of been a weird show. Obviously, the technical difficulties are keeping Kevin Bowen from joining us today. It's okay. You can roll up to the bar very early, get like a biscuits and gravy or something like that, grab a rum runner, and then he's good to go to start the day. So he will probably not check in with us the rest of the day. I mean, things could change, but it doesn't sound like the technical issues will be resolved by then. But we touched on Pacers. We talked some Colts. We talked some the Chargers are playing in Brazil. Could the Colts be heading to Brazil? That would be interesting. Sao Paulo. Have you traveled internationally? Where's the farthest you've traveled?
It was Germany. It was Frankfurt for the game a couple years ago. Yeah, no, rub it in. That was literally the only trip I've ever taken.
Well, I would love to go to Germany.
But it was, that was fun.
I've not left the continent, the Canada, U.S., Mexico area. I've not left the continent.
That was my first time going truly overseas. I've been to Canada, I've been to Toronto for a Pacers game when I covered them for a little bit. But fun fact, when we were in Frankfurt, Joel A. Erickson from Indy Star was like my guide when we were taking the train back to our hotel after the game because the media bus kind of left pretty soon. We were all trying to hit deadline, and shout out to Joel, man. He got us on the train. He was like, chauffeuring me around a little bit or at least chaperoning me and made sure we got back safely because it is the most terrifying thing is when we got on the train and we knew where to get off because it was the only stop that was in English. Mm-hmm. But, man, it's like if you miss that stop, it is all, German, and you just don't know where you are. You can't read anything, so that was a bit difficult, but it was a fun experience.
Joel Erickson is a very nice man. I can totally see him taking the reins of, all right, guys, this is how we're traveling.
That's how he is,
I also feel like Joel Erickson probably owns, a pair of lederhosen. He was probably locked in on the German attire and everything out there. I could totally see that happening.
No, it was a good time.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit. We got Alex Golden coming up at the top of the hour, talk a little bit of Pacers. We can start the little Pacers talk here. Earlier before the All-Star break, we saw that Rick Carlisle made some lineup changes. Most notably, Benedict Mathurin coming off the bench now for the Pacers. Are you in favor of that move? Do you like what it's doing? Because I personally like it. I think that Mathurin, yes, they've tried to crack him into the starting five, but as far as the energy and the kind of what he brings to a team, I think he's a perfect sixth man to come off the bench and kind of give that juice when the Pacers need it.
Yeah, obviously we'll talk more with Alex Golden about this soon, but I do think that his style of play sort of fits that second unit where he can just go out there and be himself, which is to score. Quite honestly, that's his best skill in the NBA. Not saying he can't do anything else, but when he's able to attack downhill, get to the rim, and be sort of the number one option, we've seen the results of that. And then, as far as looking at the results of it, he, I think, really responded well and answered the bell. Now, obviously, you want to see some more production from Aaron Nesmith. I know he got in foul trouble in that Knicks game when they first made the change a few games before the break. But still, overall, I understand why the change was made, and I'm with it. I'm on board with it. But like I said earlier on the show, I just believe whatever you decide, at some point you have to kind of, all right, this is what we're going with as we enter the playoffs.
Pacers got back to work yesterday, their first practice since the All-Star break. Rick Carlisle talked about those lineup changes.
I don't like a lot of upheaval. I don't like lineup changes, all that kind of stuff. But when something like this comes along and there's so much evidence that it's the right thing, for so many reasons analytically, and probably with the eye test too, you've got to take note.
So Rick Carlisle, he doesn't like making lineup changes. I know when we've had him on our air, he doesn't like discussing them overly much, but if it's going to give a boost to the team, he's going to do what's best for the team.
He should. And again, this is a team that has a wealth of talent, and really, these are conversations that you wish you could have had last year because Benedict had the shoulder injury fairly early in the season, and he was out, so you kind of figured out who you are without him. But now that he's back in the mix, this is a good problem, and I think that they're sort of solving it in the best way. My thing is, as they get back to the court, and I think Miles being healthy will help with this, obviously. But defensively, they have to play better defense, and they have to be more, unified on that front because giving up so many points. I was watching that Wizards game, what is going on? Are you guys trying to give everyone in Indiana a heart attack or something like that? But they got it together. They got the win, which ultimately what matters. But just we all know that style of play will not sustain you for very long.
Yeah, that the one thing from that Eastern Conference Finals run that just sticks in my side that I wish it would have been different would have been had Ben McMathern been fully healthy, I would have loved to have seen him in that playoff atmosphere. I think he would have totally eaten up the whole, being on the visiting team in like Madison Square Garden, all that stuff, and just kind of feeding into the crowd and everything like that. I feel like that kind of energy feeds into his game and kind of gives him a boost athletically and everything like that. So the Pacers returning from the All-Star break, they are getting back to practice right now, and then they will take on the Memphis Grizzlies. So it's a tough test right out of the All-Star break with them when they take on the Memphis Grizzlies. What are your expectations for the Pacers heading into this last set of games?
I think it's to make sure you stay in that top 4.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have some letdown, end up in the play-in, which would be a pretty crazy fall. But
I would say so.
Because the Eastern Conference is like, you look at some of these teams and I'm like, why are they even allowed into the playoffs?
Mm-hmm.
But I would just say staying in the top 4, staying healthy obviously is the big thing too. But as I said, defensively, like, what are you going to do when your shots aren't falling? And I get it. Like, you want to play good offense. You want to be who you are, which is high level, high tempo offense. But when the game kind of slows down or things aren't working, you can't be giving up, backdoor layups to Josh Hart every single possession when they were playing the Knicks, or they can't give up, a ton of points to Jordan Poole when he seems like the only good player on the Wizards. And so those are the areas where I'm like, they have to be a little bit more keyed in. So I'm excited about the Pacers, though, because as you said, assuming they get to the playoffs healthy, we should see them at full strength, which is what everyone wanted to see last year. And other teams will be healthy as well. The Bucks and others, they'll look a little different. I know Pacers fans are probably happy they don't have to see Chris Middleton again after what, some of the scares he gave him last year. But this is a team that should feel optimistic about what they have and should feel a lot better considering, even though they haven't played at their highest level of basketball as of late, this is still night and day from what we saw early in the season.
4 straight home games for the Pacers to start post-All-Star break. Grizzlies, Clippers, Nuggets, Raptors. That'll all take place from tomorrow to next Wednesday. So a busy schedule for the Pacers coming out of the All-Star break. We're going to switch sides to the neighbor that they share the Gainbridge Fieldhouse with. That's the Indiana Fever. They've obviously made some notable additions, including Stephanie White as head coach returning to the organization. There's been lots of additions, obviously, to help with Caitlin Clark's rookie contract and all that stuff. Stephanie White appeared on a podcast and with with Danny Deutsch, and talked about the additions that the Fever
Richard Deitch.
Thank you. That are when you're producing and on-air hosting at the same time, it's kind of double duty. But yeah, she discussed the additions that the Fever made and also the title talks surrounding the team.
We've got to get better on the defensive end of the floor. And so now with the roster that we have, we got to challenge our coaching staff right now to find out what that is, because it's going to be different than I think what we had originally planned because of the personnel. So do I think we can be title contenders? Absolutely. Do I think it's going to all come together right away in May? No, it's going to take time. There's always that element of luck to stay involved and stay healthy, right? Stay healthy and be peaking at the right time. But it's a challenge that I'm excited about, that we're excited about. I'm also incredibly excited about not just the players that we brought and the production that they can bring on the court, but the players we brought that fit our locker room, right? Good culture players who understand sacrificing for one another for the betterment of the team and have championship caliber pedigree.
So it's Stephanie White, Fever head coach, on the Sports Media with Richard Deutsch podcast. I think it's a very interesting offseason and going to be a very fascinating season for the Fever, because I feel like it should be an NBA Finals appearance. But with all the additions they've made, James, I'm curious just your favorite addition that they've made to this roster.
DeWanna Bonner will be my pick because she is a future Hall of Famer. I get it, she's 37, but she played at a high level last year, all-star player. She can create her own shot. She can, provide defensive versatility. So she should take a lot of, heat off of Caitlin Clark and really elevate this team into what could be title contention.
It's been a fascinating offseason for the Fever. It'll be a fascinating season when they get back to work. But coming up next, top of the hour, we're going to talk to Alex Golden, more Pacers talk as they return from the All-Star break. It's the Fan Morning Show. Mark Dykton, James Boyd, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
105 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, Fan Morning Show on this Wednesday morning. We're going to have Alex Golden of Setting the Pace join us shortly to discuss some Pacers after the All-Star break. I also want to get his thoughts on the All-Star game in general because obviously there's a lot of conjecture and everything like that people just did not like the new format and everything like that. I feel like they need to go back to the drawing board with that. I don't really know what they're doing. I think U.S. versus the world is the obvious choice. It's obviously working for the NHL with the Four Nations face-off. That seems to be I don't know if you've seen the ratings, James, but they had like 4.5 million people watching USA versus Canada on Saturday. So that formula works. Why mess with the formula? But the NBA kind of struggling right now to figure out what exactly their All-Star game is going to be. All I know is if I would have paid money, and you pay a lot of money to get in the All-Star game on Saturday and Sundays, if I would have paid money and watched what was happening on Sunday, I would be like, can I get a refund, Adam Silver? Is that possible? I did not enjoy what I watched.
The more I think about it personally, I think it's one of those things where if you're paying to go to the game, you're paying for perhaps the overall experience. Because I know when the All-Star game was in Indianapolis last year, and I spent a lot of time, covering it, there are a lot of cool things to do for kids, parents, people of all ages. And so I thought that was something that kind of felt a little bit more holistic as far as the experience. And so if you're only going to All-Star weekend for the game, it's probably not the best idea. I think the best idea will probably be to, again, go to do all the pop-up shops and, what they call activations where you can go and, shoot hoops or take a picture with the, Larry O'Brien trophy or whatever. And so those are the types of things where I think that it's important to, sort of encapsulate it all. Because when you're a kid, which I saw a ton of kids out there, they love it. But if you're, getting older and getting curmudgeon-y like me, you're probably like, give us more basketball. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest solution that the NBA can do is just have a regular basketball game.
Mm-hmm.
I know Kevin talked yesterday about having the Elam ending, which I think is great because it gives you a target score. It kind of feels like a pickup game at the YMCA sort of thing. First one to, I know at the Ursay YMCA, it's like the first one to 12, 1 by 2 or whatever. But you got to give us a regular basketball game, not all the side stuff.
Yeah. When Draymond Green is ripping it on air on TNT, that's not good. Well, let's switch to the Payless Liquors hotline right now and talk to Setting the Pace's Alex Golden, who's going to join us. Alex, James and I are discussing the issues with the NBA All-Star game. So I guess we're going to start there. We'll get to Pacers shortly. But overall, your thoughts on the NBA All-Star weekend? Obviously, a lot of conjecture about how it was not good and well-received at all. Your thoughts on that, and what is your fix for the NBA All-Star weekend?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I tweeted it out. This is the first year that I've not watched any of the All-Star weekend, and I know Pascal was there, and I probably should have watched it. I just with the new additions they made this year, it wasn't exciting to me. I don't really care about the dunk contest and the three-point shootout anymore, especially if no Pacers are involved. So, I mean, I don't really want to say that I have an opinion on this one because I didn't watch it. Based on everybody else's comments, it seemed like it was pretty awful. So I'm like, well, how can you make it better? I think the only way you can make it better is if the guys actually care and if they're incentivized somehow. But at this point, they're making so much money from the new TV deals. I just don't think they care. I don't know if canceling the All-Star game is a solution because they make so much money off of it. But the product they're putting on the court is not great. But to me, I think they need more basketball and less in-between stuff. All this talking, all the shenanigans with, honoring the TNT guys and Kevin Hart talking for 40 minutes. It's just ridiculous. So I think, honestly, just let them play basketball and let's just call it a weekend.
Yeah, we've thrown some stuff against the wall, like USA versus the world or something like that. We've seen that with the Four Nations and the NHL kind of paying off for them. The other thing, too, is that NBA players just make so much money these days that it is hard for them to kind of have a caring interest in things. Whereas, like, NHL players, yes, some of them are making like $8 million and everything like that, but you're not seeing guaranteed like $250 million contracts and all that stuff. So it is kind of like a love of the game kind of situation there. And then, yeah, the off-court stuff with just the Kevin Hart stuff. I mean, there was times when I tried to watch the game, and I'm like, I'm not seeing any basketball. I'm seeing all the shenanigans. I'm not seeing anything. And then the game would start, and you'd be like, okay, I have time to check in, and then the game would be over and stuff. So a lot of weird stuff there we'll try to figure out there. But, interesting All-Star break. We'll see what they come up with next. They're throwing stuff against the wall at the moment. So Alex Golden of Setting the Pace joining us right now on the Payless Liquors hotline. It is the Fan Morning Show. Mark Dykton, James Boyd in the studio right now. Alex, your overall thoughts just heading into the post-All-Star break for the Pacers. We saw them heading into the All-Star break kind of struggling with scoring in the final games before the break. Is that your biggest area that you hope they get corrected post All-Star break, or do you have bigger issues on your mind that this Pacers team needs to resolve if they're going to make a deep playoff run?
Yeah, I mean, they're 30-23 right now. I think that's really good considering where they were back in the first 25 games of the season, sitting at 10-15. They've gone 20-8 in their last 28 games. So, to me, I know they've not been playing well since they came back from that Paris trip. They're just 5-3. I think they have a -2 net rating over those 8 games, or like 20th in three-point shooting. Like, yeah, there's a lot of things that you don't like, but I think this team just really needed this break. Going to Paris in the middle of the season like that has just got to wear on your body. And then going on a West Coast road trip right after that, scheduling wasn't their friend, but I think that they've got a very favorable home schedule in this, next couple of months, and I think that's going to be very beneficial. But offensively, I'm not really worried about this team's offense as much as I'm worried about their defense. I think their defense is what got them going and playing so well in the month of January. I mean, that's why Andrew Nembhard was named the Defensive Player of the Month. That's what's going to help them win games. I know that everybody loves this team's offense, but if they're not locked in defensively, I think that they're going to take a step back a little bit. So if they can get back to close to what they did in January defensively, I think that they'll be, poised to kind of stay in that 4 seed and push more towards the 50-win mark compared to being more in that 45-win mark.
So, Alex, I need you to be honest with me. Did you know that the Eastern Conference gave out a Defensive Player of the Month award prior to Andrew Nembhard winning it?
I had no idea.
I did not know that was a thing. I was like, I worked in the NBA. Like, where did this come from? But obviously, it was good that he won it. Fun fact for those listening, I talked to Alex last night on his podcast, Setting the Pace. So this is like 2 times in like 12 hours, which is awesome. But along those same lines, when it comes to the defensive, effort that the Pacers are putting out, how would you assess maybe where the rest of the team fits in around an Aaron Nesmith and Miles Turner? Because I think the other guys, too, have to sort of accept that challenge as well. As we know, team defense is the key to success in the NBA. So how do the other guys kind of fit in around the key guys we know are going to bring it every night, including Andrew Nembhard?
Right. So this is where I think Siakam has gotten better this year defensively. I think he's playing with much more purpose, I guess, on that side of the ball is the right way to say it. But there are some weird ways they do utilize him. I understand when they were without Miles and they were playing the Knicks. Karl Anthony Towns dropped 40 points, and not one time was Pascal Siakam guarding Karl Towns. They had him on Precious Achiuwa, and they had Thomas Bryant out there on an island, and I thought Thomas Bryant played okay. And then when Thomas came out, they had Obi out there, right? And Obi is just not a good defender whatsoever. So I was a little bit surprised they never once tried putting Pascal on a Karl Towns just because of his ability to kind of guard him, get up in his grill a little bit, probably be a little bit faster laterally, and where Thomas gets beat off the dribble quicker and things like that. So I was a little bit surprised that they went that route instead of putting Siakam on Towns. But regardless, I mean, Tyrese, obviously, that's kind of like the black hole on the defensive side of things. But I do think, and I'm not just saying this to say this, I think Tyrese has gotten better defensively as a team defender. He's really good at kind of reading the court and kind of like making the right gamble for steals. I think too often, if he's ball watching, he might get beat off the backdoor cut, or he'll miss a box out because he's watching, things like that. But for the most part, like, we know he's not going to sit down and lock somebody up on ball defense. He's always looking over his shoulder for some help. But he's been much better as a team defender, and I think that's where he can continue to get better. So the starting 5, I think they're pretty intact defensively. We saw what they could do last year in the playoffs when they really need to. It's the bench that obviously has to figure things out. I think Obi Toppin, number 1, like, they got to figure things out with him defensively, especially if he's going to be playing some more backup 5 if they don't get a third-string center, and Miles is still kind of dealing with these injuries. And then, of course, I think Ben Shepherd's taken a step forward, and Mathurin has taken a step forward, too, defensively. It's just about being consistent. So if they can be more consistent on the defensive side of things from top to bottom, I think they'll be much better.
Alex Golden of Setting the Pace joining us on the Payless Liquors hotline on the Fan Morning Show. Alex, you mentioned his name. I was going there next. Bennedict Mathurin coming off the bench. I know Rick Carlisle doesn't really like to talk about lineup changes and everything like that. I like the move a lot. I think that's almost his strong suit, is to come off the bench and provide that energy and that burst that he can provide. Your thoughts on Bennedict Mathurin coming off the bench and potentially being like a 6th man for this team going forward?
Yeah, so I probably agree that I think it makes sense why they did it. I just felt like the timing of making that change was a little bit weird, seeing they were just 2 games away from the All-Star break. If they would have came back after the All-Star break and then kind of put that action into motion, I would have understood it a little bit more. But I was like, why are they making this change so quick? And to me, Aaron Nesmith had not been playing great at that time. Yeah, he'd been a little bit better defensively than Mathurin, but offensively, he was like 4 of 25, I think, heading into the Wizards game from three. And if Aaron Nesmith isn't making his three-point shot offensively, it's really easy to kind of guard him. So I think that with him not being that much of an offensive presence out there, Andrew without Miles, like taking another score out of the starting five at that moment didn't make a lot of sense. But I do understand why they want to bring Mathurin off the bench to kind of give more of that scoring punch with that second unit. But I think you could have still done that if you start him and then kind of pull him early, stagger his minutes where he's playing more at those second unit lineups. But at the end of the day, I think that Mathurin is a natural scorer, and there was, some wonky times there where he's trying to fit in with Halliburton and Siakam and kind of trying to be third fiddle, even fourth fiddle sometimes to Miles, and try to figure out where he fits in offensively. So this gives him more of a clear path on who he is offensively. But I think at the end of the day, because the defense has been so bad over the last 8 or so games, that is why the change was made. I think that Carlisle was realizing, okay, I need to get a better defender in there, because when you have Tyrese out there and Mathurin out there, they're not known for their defense, right? You're hoping Mathurin can get better. But I have just personally felt like when you look at those two together, their fit is so important to the success of the future of this team. And they've got to learn how to play together. And while it's been much, much better this season, I think that you started to kind of see them go back to some old habits. So maybe this change will shake things up a little bit. At the end of the day, if Mathurin's playing great, he's probably going to close games over Aaron Nesmith, and that was an option they didn't have in the playoffs last year. So I don't think it's as big of a deal as maybe some fans are making it, but I think as long as Mathurin's getting close to 28 minutes a game, you're probably going to feel pretty good about what he's doing with this team. He was putting up like 35, 37-minute games early on because of all the injuries, but now give him this opportunity to go out there and do what he does best and score, and then improve defensively. Maybe he can close some games. I think everything will work out just fine.
Alex, do you consider yourself a generous person?
I would say so, yeah.
All right. So along those lines, I don't know if you saw the clip in the Netflix documentary about the Team USA to road to gold, basically. And
Court of Gold on Netflix.
Court of Gold. There you go.
Yeah.
And Joel Embiid's talking about Indiana, said he would never come here when Tyrese Halliburton was trying to, recruit him. So I just want to know, how generous are you? Would you offer Joel Embiid, your couch if you need a big man in Indiana? Or, are you feeling mutual when it comes to him not coming here?
Well, James, I don't know if you saw this or not, but I tweeted and said, all of Pacer Nation says, thank you, Joel Embiid.
Yes.
I think Joel Embiid's a great player. Obviously, I'm not going to I'm going to just make that clear. I think he's a great player, obviously an MVP of this league. But this guy can't stay healthy. I mean, who wants a guy that can't stay healthy? And who knows if he's ever going to return to form? I mean, the fact that he was playing on a bum knee just to be in the Olympics with Team USA, that he couldn't even really go for this season and had regrets about it and stuff like that, that to me just speaks I don't know if I want this guy on my team. I know how great of a player he is, and there's a lot of great players out there, but some guys just don't fit. So while he might not win Indiana, I don't think Kevin Pritchard's picking up the phone and making some, Godfather trade to the 76ers to try and pry away Joel Embiid. So, I like you, Joel. You're a fine guy, but you can stay in Philly and keep losing in the second round of the playoffs because, Tyrese has already made it to the Eastern Conference Finals where Joel has not been.
He didn't even want to hang out with, Tyrese Halliburton's crib. I'm like, you might want to. That couch is probably, calling his name. He likes sitting down. He might enjoy it.
Look, man, that's why I was trying to get Alex to be, open doors, But it sounds like, again, Joel can stay in Philadelphia and, cannot stay at Alex Golden's house. So
there's not a couch big enough for Joel Embiid.
No, probably not.
To be honest with you.
Probably not. Alex, I follow you on Facebook, obviously, not to be weird or anything like that, but I saw your son just turned 2 months old, and I was curious, your biggest revelation since becoming a father, because James is not a father. He's always scared when we talk about kids. He's always like, I talk about my 3 daughters, and he's always very concerned, or Kevin brings up his son and daughter, and he's always concerned about that. Your biggest revelation since becoming a father is what?
My biggest revelation is that I have the best wife in the world.
Look at that.
I'm not just saying that. I mean, she's been off for the last 8-9 weeks. She goes back to work next Monday, so she's really been able to enjoy this time. But, a lot of times I hear stories about, had to get up in the middle of the night and feed the baby. She's been on top of that, so I don't have to worry about losing any sleep when it comes to trying to sleep for work and things like that. So that's been the biggest revelation, but it is also the greatest feeling in the world, James. I know it sounds crazy. It's a lot of responsibility, but just having someone to come home to like that, and just when you talk to him and he's starting to come out of his personality now at 2 months, and seeing his face smile when you're talking to him and things like that, it just melts your heart. I mean, you don't even know what's going on in the world besides that little moment right there. So being a dad obviously is the best feeling for me. But, yeah, just having a rock-solid wife makes a world of difference, and I couldn't do it without her. So she has really just made everything awesome.
We're just kind of like the bystanders, like the wives and everything. The mothers do everything else, and we're kind of like there. We're like, do you need help with that diaper? Can I do anything? And you just kind of like back out, let they know what they're doing and everything like that. And then when you have that first moment when you're by yourself, you're like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? There's no safety net now. I'm all by myself. It's kind of like a dose of reality.
Yeah, it's crazy because like I work till like 5 o'clock almost every night. So by the time I get home, I'll take the baby. She makes dinner. I'll feed him, and then of course, after we're done eating and everything's done, she'll take him for the rest of the night so I can focus on Pacer stuff and podcasts. And then, if I'm changing the diaper, she'll come in there, make sure I'm doing it right because she likes it a certain way. And if I don't have the diaper on correctly, I get in trouble for that. But other than that, I mean, everything's a great working relationship.
Now, Fletcher's his name, but does he have a nickname? Because like Golden Boy, just like that's obvious, right? That's an obvious nickname.
I mean, I got called that a lot as a kid.
Oh, okay, all right. So that's sore feelings there. I'll throw that away.
Yeah, no, I usually just call him. I just call him Bubba because he's getting heavier, or I call him Fletchy, Fletch. Whatever.
I like Fletch.
It's never the full name. So
the body changes for the baby are crazy because they'll go from like overweight and then they start crawling and all the weight melts off and everything. Like I wish it was that easy for me these days.
Bro, you and me both. I'd be crawling everywhere if I could lose some weight off crawling. So.
Well, Alex, we appreciate you always picking up the phone for us. Always appreciate your time. Have fun with Fletcher and enjoy those moments because they go by quick.
Yeah, they definitely do. It's crazy how much he's changed in 2 months. But thanks again for having me on, guys. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate you, brother. Have a good one. That's Alex Golden of Setting the Pace on the Payless Liquors hotline. Anything from Alex that really caught your ear as far as what he's expecting for the Pacers on this other side of the All-Star break?
It was really all about the sun at the end. I was like, you know what?
See?
This sounds a bit appealing to me. That was the first time, and I was like, you know what?
James is going to hit those dating
pulling
apps a little
at
later
the
after
heartstrings. So, but yeah, still, I'm like, But then I think about the diaper part, and you know what? I am terrible at all of the baby shower games and all that. No one ever wants me on their team because I am just awful. It would take me probably 5 minutes to get a diaper on correctly, which is in baby world I know is an eternity. So for things to happen. But other than that, as far as the actual Pacers, I think what he said about the team taking a step forward defensively will be huge for them down the stretch.
I just remember the health class in high school that you had to either take the baby home or you had to write about like drugs and alcohol or something. I was like, give me the paper. I'll write the paper.
That was me. I'm like, I'm not carrying this fake baby around. Yeah.
It's like I wanted my sleep. I'm watching Monday Night Raw till 10 p.m. I don't have time for this. All right, we talked a little Pacers there. We talked a little Fever. Let's get back into the Colts a little bit. James, you talked about your article a little earlier as far as like a free agent that should be on the Colts list. That was Javion Holland of the Dolphins, a safety on the Miami Dolphins, who is not going to get his contract picked up and everything like that. So he's going to hit free agency. I'm curious, how realistic is it that you think the Colts actually land him? That would be obviously that's a big money deal if you're going to land him. And then also, are there any other upgrades you want to specifically see the Colts target in free agency rather than the draft?
I would definitely think that safety is priority number one in free agency. Javon Holland from the Miami Dolphins is a pretty good player, young player. As far as percentages of him landing in Indianapolis and becoming a Colt, I put it at maybe 35%, 40%, which is probably lower than what fans want to hear. But, I mean, just given the track record for the Colts, all of us should never believe in anything until it happens. And so I would just have to see them spend big money at a position that maybe isn't a premium one. It's a big deal. I don't know if safety for other teams is as big a deal, just league-wide, but I'll have to see it to believe. But I definitely think that the safety is huge. I could also see them going after a top-level cornerback like Charvarius Ward from the 49ers. He's a big-time player. Had an all-pro season in 2023, dealt with some personal tragedy with the loss of his daughter in 2024 and kind of is bouncing back mentally. But, again, I just have to see them spend the money. And then other than that, I don't see other, big positions. I could see linebacker being in the draft or free agency, but I do think free agency is a sneaky need. Linebacker is a sneaky need in free agency, assuming that you don't bring back E.J. Speed. I know E.J. Speed has been, a pretty good player for the Colts. He's sort of overperformed to an extent considering where he was drafted, being a special teamer, being a first-time, starter this past year for the full season. Whereas now, I think you probably need to upgrade a little bit more around Zaire Franklin, who's coming off his all-pro season. So we'll see. But Javon Holland, man, a lot of teams will be calling him for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah, and the Colts obviously haven't spent much in free agency before, so that would be I would say that would be an A player that would go on day one if possible for Chris Ballard. And I think that's what Colts fans just want to see. They want to see the effort. They want to see, they don't want to hear, oh, we just came up short. We were in the mix, but we came up short. They want to see you hit on some of these guys. They want to see you get some home runs in free agency because during the Chris Ballard tenure, there just hasn't been those guys that you've said, they go out and get on day one. The Colts have routinely been a day 2, day 3 guys. They kind of get the scraps once the big names go off the board. And I'm not saying spend money just to spend money, but spend it wisely, but spend it on some guys that are actually going to make a difference, not only on your depth chart and everything like that, but actually make an impact on your game-to-game operations.
Risk. I think that's what people want to see is you take a risk. Actually believe in what you're doing because what we've seen is you're kind of dipping your toe in the water, and then you end up with an 8-9 season, 9-8 season, and these seasons where it's probably the worst scenario to be in as an NFL team is when you're not good enough to be a contender, but not bad enough to really get, a life-changing or franchise-altering draft pick.
I call it the circle of suck. I don't know if that's caught on at all, but when you're in the middle, I don't care what sport you're playing, whether that's the NBA, baseball, or everything. If you're just in the middle, you're in hell. You're in sports hell because you're not good enough to make a championship run. You're not bad enough to have game difference-making draft picks and everything like that. You're just stuck in the middle.
To keep it, Indiana-centric, we saw that with the Pacers.
Yep.
I remember when they picked Benedict Mather, it was their first single-digit draft pick in almost 30 years. Mm-hmm. It was crazy. They were always good enough to just get into the playoffs until they finally decided, hey, how about we just stink for a while? We get a high draft pick, we trade away some assets, and we bring in a star, and we rebuild this thing the right way. Now, obviously, the plan was for Anthony Richardson to be sort of that high draft pick that hits. Hasn't worked out that way for them so far, but it doesn't mean that you just become complacent and be okay with banking on him being the only change or improvement. You're hoping that Anthony Richardson gets it together. Do other things to advance your team, to help your team, because, in the interim, Quentin Nelson isn't getting any younger. DeForest Buckner isn't getting any younger. So if you're trying to win anything with any player that you've invested in over the last few years, you got to make some moves.
The backup quarterback position, in your mind, James, the second string quarterback, assuming Anthony Richardson is your QB1 heading into training camp in the start of the season, your QB2, will that be a veteran or is that going to be a rookie from the draft?
For me, it will be a veteran.
Yep.
I do think that it's plausible that the Colts could target a rookie quarterback, and I think it's actually probably a good idea to bring one in. I could see both sides of it, bringing one in or not bringing one in and using that pick elsewhere. But I think when they say competition, you have to have somebody who started some games, who's had some success in the NFL, and obviously they're slim pickings when it comes to free agent quarterbacks. Otherwise, they wouldn't be free agents.
Right.
But Justin Fields, Daniel Jones, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, whoever it is that they bring in, can definitely help.
I have one that I feel like hasn't been on the radar. I've always liked this guy, especially in a backup role, is Taylor Heineke. I know he doesn't do everything for a lot of people, but as far as a backup, I always thought he's been solid. I think he understands where he's at in his career. He could start for you if he needs to. I think he's still solid there. And I don't think he's going to cost you as much as a Justin Fields would necessarily. So Taylor Heineke is a guy that I've kind of got on my sneaky board as far as backup quarterback ideas there. I don't know where Colts fans are on that, but Justin Fields, I'm assuming you have to back up the truck a little bit because he's going to have suitors. Sam Darnold, I don't see him coming here at all. He's going to start somewhere. But Justin Fields, I feel like as far as a backup option, is going to probably be the top of the list as far as the guy who's going to get paid the most money from some team.
Yeah, Justin Fields does feel like a long shot, but the reason why his name and Daniel Jones' name always come to my mind first is more so the style of play. Do you want that continuity if Anthony Richardson were to go down where you can run a similar style of offense? Now, I don't know if that's been overstated, that need, because obviously if a quarterback goes down, you would just have to change your game plan and revamp things. And it's worked out well for other teams where they don't always have that similar quarterback behind the starter. But I wonder how much of a priority that is. And obviously we'll ask Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen those questions here in about a week or so. But they're not going to give us those definitive answers, and we won't know until they make a move. So I'm very curious. And then, to wrap this up, the quarterbacks will probably be decided or plucked up pretty quickly when it comes to free agency because they set the market. They kind of set how things go. So we'll know pretty soon here when free agency starts in about a month.
Yeah, plenty of questions to ask Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen. They'll be at the Combine next week. We'll be at the Combine next week as well. We can get into some more Colts discussion. We also have a pop quiz to wrap up the show as well. But before we do all that, it's time for a morning check down.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Corteva Coliseum, March 10th and 11th.
All right, 3 straight losses for the Purdue Boilermakers last night. A loss to Michigan State, unfortunately, 75-66. Talked with Nathan Baird earlier in the show about that. Again, Trey Coffin-Wren, 24 points, and Braden Smith, 17 points as well. 3 straight losses for the Purdue Boilermakers. They take on Indiana on Sunday at 1:30, so it'll be interesting to see. Something's got to give in that series, and it's kind of like Mike Woodson's last stand, and can Matt Painter right the ship and everything like that. Lots of questions for both teams heading into Sunday afternoon, James. Elsewhere on the college hoops front, Butler saw their 3-game winning streak snapped as they fell to Xavier 76-63. They'll take on DePaul on Saturday, and then we saw it announced earlier, the NFL kind of expanding their international series. Again, another Brazil game in Sao Paulo that'll feature the Los Angeles Chargers as the home team. It's interesting here because the Colts are a home opponent for the Chargers, so we'll see if that comes out. I don't know when they are planning to announce the opponents for these games. I'm guessing closer to the schedule release, when that usually happens in like mid to late April after the draft. So we'll see what happens there. But the Colts could be traveling internationally at some point in the 2025 season. We'll see what's going on there. We've got more coming up on the Fan Morning Show. James Boyd, Mark Dykton in studio. It's the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
A little AC/DC on this Wednesday morning. Hope you're staying safe out there. I haven't seen any traffic alerts too much on WIBC traffic. That's usually a good thing, James, especially when this weather's out here. Cold, snowy, windy. We got it all on this February 19th. So stay safe out there. Stay warm if you can. Drop the kids off at school and enjoy the rest of the day. Don't do any errands today. Just take it easy. No need to do all that stuff. Anyway, we talked a lot about – we sprayed all fields today. But let's get into Purdue a little bit more. Purdue and Indiana now set up for the next game. That is Sunday afternoon at 1:30. Kind of a mixed bag for both teams. Purdue struggling against the last three games, 3-game losing streak there. Didn't look great against Michigan State, Wisconsin, nothing like that. So, and then IU, obviously, it's kind of Woodson's last stand. I'm very curious to see how that crowd is going to be on Sunday for him and everything like that. Any overall thoughts heading into Sunday with Purdue and Indiana?
I think this is a game where Indiana should feel pretty confident considering how they played against them last time. I know that sounds crazy considering they've, lost so many games recently, and their one kind of jewel throughout this losing streak has been, Michigan State. But I mean, the rivalry games are always weird, man. Like, and you catch a team at home, they're kind of sputtering a bit, and it is Mike Woodson's potentially last game against this team as a head coach. Why not go out there and kind of shock the world a little bit? And I do think that they have a chance, mainly because IU's size could be a problem for Purdue. And I think that that's a consistent thing that I've seen just watching more Purdue games lately to prepare for the show. Man, as Kevin mentioned earlier, and for those just tuning in, Kevin was not able to join a lot throughout the show because of technical difficulties. So Mark has been, wearing several hats today. He's done a good job of it, I think.
Doing everything.
But all that to say, they really, really missed Zach Edey on the defensive end. I know he was a great scorer, one of the most dominant scorers in the Big Ten in the country last year, but they just don't have that size, and they haven't had it just because of some injuries and things like that. So that's one thing where I feel like, you look at Mbako and others, maybe they can exploit that a bit to, have another upset and kind of hand it to Purdue.
It is weird to say, like, a team that's lost 6 of 7 like IU has, that you kind of say, like, I feel good about them heading into Sunday against Purdue. It is kind of weird to say just because you've seen how big a powerhouse that Purdue has been over the last few years, especially with Zach Edey.
And I wonder, can they just win a close game? Like, they're in these games. Like, what? Like, can you finish a game? Can you finish?
It is one of those things where it's like, they always say, like, oh, if the ball bounces your way, I'm like, there's been so many times that the ball could have bounced IU's way and it just hasn't this year. And eventually it kind of goes off like, okay, it's not just a talent issue and everything like that. It's just like, you guys just aren't good enough and everything like that.
Yeah.
But they do have a shot at beating Purdue. I think they are catching Purdue at the right time. But I think also Purdue's going to look at IU and say, we're catching them at the right time. They've lost 6 of 7.
Yeah.
Mike Woodson's on his way out. They've got a bunch of upheaval as far as the student section and everything like that, as far as their thoughts on who the coach should be going forward. And also Purdue just needs to right the ship. They've got aspirations that Indiana does not have when the tournament comes in March. So I think that they're going to right the ship. They did not look good against the 3 ranked opponents. So now you've got IU. This should be the game. This should be the get-right game for Purdue. But they've struggled. They've struggled a lot. Even the scoring is down a little bit. We saw last night Braden Smith need to get a little bit of a rest because he might be getting a little burned out and everything there. So lots of questions for both sides of the team. I think it's going to be a fascinating watch on Sunday.
I will say this, though. All I ask, and I know this is a big ask from Big Ten officials, please let the players decide the game. Did you see that call on Camden Heide last night?
Yep. Uh-huh.
I could not believe that they called a foul, a rebounding foul on that when he just went to a higher level and grabbed the ball. Like, how can you call that foul on him on Akins? I don't even think Akins thought that was a foul on Cam Heide. So I was just disgusted by that call. I didn't decide the game, but those are some of the plays where I'm just like, you'll watch a Big Ten game and you'll see some teams just brawling in the paint, and then we'll have a play like that, and we're like, what are you doing? So let the players decide the game. I do think it's still an uphill battle for IU, and when you think about what Purdue's sort of chasing, as you alluded to, Mark, and also them getting some rest going into this game, having several days to prepare, they'll be ready to go for sure, and they certainly don't want to give anything to their rivals. So I would expect Braden Smith in particular, the head of the Snake, to be a bit better than he's been in his last couple of games.
I don't know how much of, like, outside of, like, Indiana and Purdue basketball, like, how much college basketball you consume on a regular basis, and we haven't really discussed, and we won't stick on it too much, but did you see Kansas just get their doors blown up by BYU last night? Bill Self's worst loss in his career. It was just 91-57. I kind of saw that score in the lower chyron of of scores. I was like, wait, that can't be right. That can't be. Sure enough, it was. The Kansas Jayhawks just got blown out last night. I have not seen that before. Obviously, Bill Self hasn't seen that either because he's on the receiving end of that beatdown.
Yeah, usually they're pretty solid, against unranked opponents. And it's one of those things where we're getting closer to March, Mark, where things get crazy.
Your beloved Illinois, they fell to Wisconsin, by the way, last night, 95-74.
Oh, you didn't have to bring that up, brother.
I had to bring it up. It has been
downhill literally ever since they had the upside-down jersey retirement for Terrence Jr. So
yeah, that was – I don't understand how that even happened.
It's an inside job, according to Twitter.
Inside job how? I just don't understand how, you obviously have to put the apron up to block it out, and shouldn't you be able to see, hey, this is upside down, folks. You should probably rearrange this. I don't understand how on earth that happens. I know Champagne's the name of the town. I didn't think they were drinking champagne regularly. I don't know how those errors happen.
That's the only way to explain that one. For sure.
So we'll see what's going on there. We got a pop quiz coming up in a few minutes. Any other overall thoughts as far as whether it's Colts related? We kind of discussed the backup quarterback. Actually, I will go back into Colts real quick. We talked the backup quarterback position. The backup running back position, I think, is like a sneaky big issue when it comes to the Colts. Obviously, Trey Sermon, I don't expect them to bring him back or anything like that. The future of the running back position behind Jonathan Taylor, I think it's nice to have a workhorse like Jonathan Taylor. I also think it's 2025 where teams kind of lean on the dual-headed running back situation. Are you all for kind of them pushing all chips in on Jonathan Taylor once again, or would you like to see a more sturdy running back back him up at the RB2?
I just don't think it's wise to do that in this league, especially JT has missed a handful of games in each of the last couple of seasons, really since his 2021 season where he was a first-team All-Pro. He's had an injury that's caused him to miss multiple games in a row every year. Even this past year, which he had a pretty great season, missed 3 games due to an ankle sprain. And so I don't know if that's just a smart decision at all. And you probably need somebody back there that's a bit more explosive than what we've seen. And so if they don't trust Tyler Goodson, don't trust Trey Sermon, go out and get another body that can help alleviate some of that pressure. And I'm fine with them riding him, late in the season because that's when you're trying to win. But to put that amount of mileage on him early in the season and expect him to hold up for 17 games just seems a bit unrealistic. So I would definitely draft a running back to be that RB2.
So you would go running back draft over free agent acquisition?
Most likely. I mean, there's free agents out there, but, the guys have tread on their tires, and I just wouldn't pay a lot of money. And to me, if you want fresh legs, if you want someone who can come in and be a difference maker right away, we've seen it time and time again where teams can go out there and draft a guy and be okay in the backfield.
I think it'll be interesting with this running back market. Obviously, there's not the Saquon Barkleys or the Derrick Henrys out there in this one. But what those two guys did this past season, I wonder if that changes as far as financially how much some guys are going to get in free agency. If GMs around the league kind of open the pocketbook a little more for the running back position, when a couple of years ago they weren't willing to do so.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too, but I also think that conversation would go something like this. Hey, are you Saquon Barkley? No. Are you Derrick Henry? No. Okay, well, we're not paying you that.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of anomalies.
Najee Harris.
Yeah, exactly. I think Derrick Henry is an anomaly as far as his health. He hasn't really gotten hurt. He's played a lot. Saquon, the part that gets glossed over with his, Giants tenure is that he was hurt as well as far as paying him. And so he stayed healthy with the Eagles and had an amazing season, arguably one of the greatest running back seasons we've ever seen. But I just don't know if I would, look at those two and say, all right, this guy could be that. I don't know. Because, realistically, Derrick Henry is a Hall of Famer. And if Saquon has another 2 or 3 great seasons, he could be in the Hall of Fame as well.
No, if he's got the strength of lifting grown men out of crowds at Super Bowl parades, I think he's got a few miles left in the tank as far as I'm concerned. Happy 45th birthday, by the way, Dwight Freeney. Thanks to Mike Chappell for tweeting that out. Dwight Freeney, 45 years old today. So big birthday for the big man.
Real quick, who would you say is the most famous person you've met when it comes to these types of things? I always think I would have never had a chance to cross paths with Dwight Freeney if I hadn't been in radio or in media or whatever.
Biggest athlete celebrity?
Yeah, just in general. Because he's a pretty big deal. I was thinking, man, he's a legend here.
Well, it's pretty easy for me. I don't know who that is. Is Dwight Freeney your number one?
No, randomly, I met Floyd Mayweather when I was a kid back in Chicago. He was just downtown shopping before he became a global guy. But yeah, Floyd Mayweather, LeBron, just stuff like that. But just in general public, probably Floyd.
Jennifer Aniston for me. Her and Vince Vaughn. I've mentioned this story a few times. People are probably sick of it. I know my wife is. I was an extra after my freshman year in college. I went back up to Illinois for the summer, and I was an extra in the movie The Breakup. And you can see me in the movie and everything like that. But I was in the opening scene, the Wrigley Field scene, but it's a rom-com with Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn and Jon Favreau. And so after like we would shoot and everything like that, they would kind of walk around and everything like that. And you kind of didn't want to you didn't want to step on any toes, like talk to anybody. Like you didn't want to get kicked out. But I've had a crush on Jennifer Aniston since the days of yore. And so when she walked by, I just said, "Hey, Jen," and I think she shook my hand. We discussed the weather. I think something stupid, but I haven't washed this hand since. I'm very thankful for that. She is as gorgeous as she is on TV, actually more so in person. So that was the big moment. So Jennifer Aniston would be number one for me. But yeah,
there you go. I mean, Dwight's like hanging out with MJ, so he's had a pretty good life, man.
I wonder if I've always heard that MJ does not pay off his bets. Like he bets people on the course and everything like that, and it just like welches on him. So I wonder if Dwight Freeney. We'll never get the truth out of it, I'm sure, but I wonder if Dwight Freeney's ever gotten MJ to pay up if he's bested him on the course.
Or do you just get paid in like sneakers?
Well, I've heard before like he's had caddies that like the tip was like he autographed a golf ball for him. I'm like, hey, that's cool. It's a Michael Jordan autographed golf ball. At the same time, you're like, I know how much money you have, MJ. You probably throw a couple shekels my way. It's not going to hurt you. Speaking of coming up your way, we've got the pop quiz on the other side. Jiffy Lube oil change on the line. Go 5 for 5. You'll get that. You can probably use one, especially on this weather day. So give us a call, 317-239-1070. We're going to do the pop quiz to wrap up the show. It's the Fan Morning Show. Mark Dykton, James Boyd, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Fan Morning Show on this Wednesday. Mark Dykton, James Boyd in studio. Kevin Bowen, again, technical difficulties out in Florida. Not on his fault. It was on our end. It was issues. I guess the internet went out in the building last night, so all our systems for like remote work and everything like that have gone out the window. So Kevin Bowen joined us for a little bit, especially in the 8 o'clock hour as well. He checked in, but then we said sayonara, enjoy Florida. So he is out the rest of the week. It'll be myself and Brendan King tomorrow and Friday to get you set for the sports weekend, including IU and Purdue. We've talked about that a little bit. We talked about Purdue's struggles, talked about Mike Woodson's last stand, as I cough right now. And then we've also discussed, obviously, plenty of Colts stock, Pacers returning from the All-Star break and all that stuff. We got the pop quiz coming up shortly in a couple minutes, 317-239-1070 if you want to hop on there. What else are you doing on this Wednesday aside from trying to stay out of the cold, frigid temperatures? So give us a call. Try to win yourself or your wife or your significant other a Jiffy Lube oil change. If you go 5 for 5, you can do that. James, thoughts? Any thoughts on the show so far, and any overarching thoughts before we get into the pop quiz here?
I think the biggest thing is that Kevin Bowen is probably somewhere getting tan. You know, he might come back with bleach blonde hair.
I was about to ask him if he tans or does he just burn. I don't know. I don't know if I've ever seen really a tan Kevin Bowen.
I was gonna say that is a question that I'm sure he'd be glad to answer, and if that affects him wearing the Speedo or not, I don't know.
He joked about that. I would like to think he didn't actually pack it, but I also don't know what he's actually doing with it these days. It's just sitting there for like a rainy day.
I need the full backstory here. I'm gonna ask him for this story on or off air one of these days, and he's gonna have to give me the rundown of what's going on and how it all came to be.
It has to just be sitting there because he was so down that his Notre Dame Irish just got the doors blown off of him once again in the national championship game. I told him he still should have had to do like a loser walk or something in it. Like, I know it's -3 outside, but like, you built it up that you were going to do this if they won. You should have to do a loser walk if they lost.
Dang, you are like cold, man.
Well, at that point, I the producer in me, I just want the show content. I wanted
fair.
People weren't wanting to see Kevin Bowen in a Speedo, but at the same time, like, we pumped this up for like 3 weeks. We might as well pay this off.
You got to
give the Speedo company some pub.
There you go.
So anyway, we got the pop quiz coming up shortly. I've got some callers I have to take. James, you might have to take the reins momentarily.
It is
while
fine.
we do this.
I got it. I know one thing that we did talk about earlier was Purdue and IU. How does each team respond to their forthcoming matchup? And I think one of the biggest things for Purdue is, one, they have to be able to defend the paint a lot better. Giving up 10 dunks obviously isn't conducive to success. And then number two, I think Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Rand, and really I think Caleb First too, all have to be a little bit better. I don't know, Fletcher Lawyer's in that mix as well. But I think Caleb First, him being in foul trouble early last night really hurt, Purdue, and Trey Kaufman-Rand got in foul trouble as well. And they just don't have, the bodies to sustain that level of foul trouble as they did, in the past when they had, just the National Player of the Year. No big deal last season. So we'll see how that goes. And then on IU's perspective, Mike Woodson's last hurrah. Mm-hmm. Do you want to go out with a bang against your rival, potentially your last matchup against them?
Yeah, I've said it a couple times this show. I think it is both teams catching each other at the right time, if that makes any sense. IU's lost 6 of 7. Purdue's lost 3 in a row. So both teams could use a win in a big way on Sunday. So it's going to be interesting to see which team gets the win in that one. It is time now for the pop quiz, though, so let's dive in.
Have you studied? Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the pop quiz. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
All right, James, so you filled in the last couple days, and appreciate that very much. You cannot see what the callers are looking like on this side. I can. It's full phone line. So from 1 through 8, why don't you do the honors? You pick out the caller number, and then we'll throw them on the air, whoever that may be.
Give me number 5.
Number 5, that is Paul. Paul, good morning, sir. How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing, fellas?
Doing well. Okay, are you outside right now? Have you been outside recently?
Yeah, I just drove to the gym, so okay. Yeah, I've been outside.
What is the weather like out there? Because James and I haven't really seen the outside world in the last 3 hours, so we keep saying it's windy, it's rainy, or it's snowy and cold, but I mean it could be 70 and sunny outside with this Midwest weather. We don't really know.
It's the 3 things you just said.
Oh, Lord.
Windy, cold, and snowy. Although the snowing has tapered off, and it would be what you would call a light mist right about now if it was raining.
All right.
So you can barely tell it's snowing.
So, Paul, you lifting weights right now? It sounds like someone's getting in some work behind you, the noise in the background.
Yeah.
Pump and iron. All
I would
right.
say Paul's, benching 225 right now on the phone.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not doing squats right now, are you? Don't multitask on this.
No, it's upper body day today, but
Okay.
James, 225 is selling me kind of short.
Oh,
look out.
I was saying 225 with the phone, with the phone in hand, one arm. So,
Yeah.
I apologize.
Put some respect on Paul's name. All right, Paul. Well, good luck at the gym today. Don't pull anything, but hopefully you go 5 for 5 here and you get yourself a Jiffy Lube oil change, all right?
All right, fellas.
All right, let's start it off here. All right, Paul. Notre Dame women's basketball team is #1 in this week's AP poll. Who did the Irish replace as the top team in the country? Was it UCLA, USC, UConn, or Texas?
UCLA.
Oh, good. Paul.
Ooh,
Good
got it out
Lord.
before you can even give the other options.
I know.
All right. #2, with Purdue's loss last night at Michigan State, the Boilers fall to 4th place in the Big Ten Conference standings at 11-5. Which of the following teams trails Purdue in the Big Ten standings? Is it Wisconsin, Michigan State, Michigan, or Maryland?
Maryland.
Man,
all right, woo.
Paul off to a good start right here. He's getting a pump in, and he's also 2 for 2 to start this pop quiz. All right, Paul. Entering play tonight, 17 of the 18 Big Ten men's basketball teams have overall records this season of 500 or better. Name the only Big Ten men's basketball team that is under 500 this season. Penn State, Washington, Rutgers, or Northwestern.
You say Washington or Rutgers? You said Penn State,
Penn State, Washington,
or
Rutgers, or Northwestern.
Ooh. I'm just going to say Northwestern.
Okay. Question
Right.
4, James, go ahead.
The NBA season resumes tonight as Lakers host the Hornets in a game postponed back in January due to the LA wildfires. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander leads the NBA in scoring at 32.5 points per game, while his Oklahoma City Thunder are tied for the best record in the league. Since the advent of the NBA Most Valuable Player Award in the 1955-56 season, 7 players have led the league in scoring while playing for the team with the best regular season record. Of those 7 players, again, 6 were named league MVP. Which one did not win league MVP honors after having the best record and also leading their team in scoring? Was it Giannis Antetokounmpo? Was it James Harden? Was it Michael Jordan? Or was it Wilt Chamberlain?
Ooh.
Did you follow that novel?
It's a little long-winded, but basically the gist of it is, again, who led their team in scoring, had the best record, but did not win MVP? Was it Giannis, James Harden, MJ, or Wilt?
I'm going to say Wilt.
All right.
All right, Paul, let's wrap it out here so you can get on the what do you do leg day at all, or is this strictly upper body day?
No. I do leg day. Yesterday was a total body day. Since today is upper body, tomorrow will be lower body.
Paul locked in.
I tried to do P90X once, like without doing anything. I felt like I was like on death's door. All right, Paul, question 5 to get you out of here. William Byron won the Daytona 500 on Sunday, becoming the 5th driver to win the Great American Race in back-to-back years. Richard Petty was the first to win back-to-back in 1973 and 74. Of the following drivers, which did not win the Daytona 500 in back-to-back years? Was it Sterling Marlin, Michael Waltrip, Kyle Yarborough, or Denny Hamlin?
Let's just go. Hey, I'm black, so I don't know too much about races. So I'm going to go Denny Hamlin.
Hey, I'm white, and I don't know Daytona 500 that much either, Paul. Hang in there, Paul. Hang in there, man. All right, so Paul, he had a very solid effort, I would say. Despite multitasking and everything like that, Paul had a very respectable effort. He was correct on the first 2. Yes, UCLA is the top team in the Irish replaced UCLA in the women's AP poll.
Great.
When it comes to Purdue, or the only team that's below 500, he said Maryland. That was correct. Yeah. I'm sorry. Who trails Big Ten? I'm sorry. I'm reading these questions as I'm doing that. Yeah. Well, anyway, Maryland was the answer for question 2. He's 2 for 2 to start the game. and he ended up getting he struggled the rest of the way now that I think about it. He lost on question 3. The answer was Rutgers is the only team in the Big Ten that is under 500. He said Northwestern. It was actually Rutgers. So Paul, get a pump in, have a smoothie afterwards to work off all those sweats and everything like that. But Rutgers was the correct answer for number 3. Giannis Antetokounmpo in 2022 and 2023 was the answer for question 4. Joel Embiid won MVP that year. That's interesting considering Joel Embiid's comments on the Pacers this morning. And then Michael Waltrip, not Denny Hamlin, was 2001 and 2003. He won the Daytona 500, but not in back-to-back years. So, Paul, appreciate it. Thank you for calling. But, yeah, enjoy that workout today. So, James, you are done for the rest of the week. The next time we see you, I'm not sure what the co-hosting schedule is next week, but you'll at least be out at the Combine. Is there anything you are looking at overall at the Combine, looking forward to at the Combine next week out at the Indianapolis Convention Center?
Obviously, hearing from the GM and the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. That'll be next Tuesday at 4:30.
Right?
Yes,
yeah,
4:30 for Chris Ballard, then 5:30 for Shane Steichen. So I will, and for context, it's like you're starting your day then, basically. So I'll be writing off of that, reacting to that. But also, just as a fan of the game, I want to talk to Tyler Warren for Colts reasons, but also Shadur Sanders. I want to see just the reception around him and the fanfare because of who his dad is and who he's projected to be or where he's projected to go in the draft as a top 5 pick.
I am curious. You mentioned it yesterday that like we've usually in combines past have had that one guy or two that kind of like gets the crowd gathered around them. I am curious to see who that is this year.
I think it's going to be between Travis Hunter and Shadur Sanders.
I think you're correct there. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like, is Dion going to be walking around doing stuff? I don't know. I'm going to be very curious to see what that combine crowd looks like next week when we get out there. So, James, appreciate you filling in the last couple of days. Kevin Bowen, enjoy Florida. He is out the rest of the week. It's myself and Brendan King Thursday and Friday on the Fan Morning Show. So we'll get you set for the sports weekend. We'll talk to Scott Agnes tomorrow, Greg Rakestraw, obviously, on Friday, and we'll throw some other stuff at you as well as we get ready for the sports weekend, including IU and Purdue on Sunday. So thank you for joining us on the Fan Morning Show. It's Mark Dykton, James Boyd, Kevin Bowen via Florida. It's the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Have a great day, everybody.